History in the making now on BBC One and the BBC HD channel. Hugh Edwards is in Washington for the inauguration of President Obama.
It is 11 o'clock in Washington, D.C. It is Inauguration Day, the biggest America has ever known, and a real defining moment in this country's history. The crowds, the immense crowds, have been gathering from first light. Millions of people are expected around the U.S. Capitol to witness the swearing-in of the first African-American to become President and Commander-in-Chief. A very warm welcome to our special coverage of today's events from our rooftop studio near the US Capitol building. That is where the presidential swearing-in ceremony will take place within the next hour. And as I speak, the crowds still queuing up by the thousand to get into the National Mall to have their view, just a glimpse of the US Capitol in the distance. And I can tell you that the president-elect has already been making his way into the US Capitol building, accompanied by the outgoing President George W. Bush and the incoming 44th President Barack Hussein Obama. Well, it's not often we can say that we are witnesses to the making of history, but we certainly are today, and it's a great privilege to be here. A little word about the weather and the conditions, because it's always a feature of Inauguration Day. The sun is out, we're grateful for that. It's cold, but not as cold as it was back in 1985, when Ronald Reagan had to cancel his parade and have the swearing-in ceremony indoors. So nothing like that. And as you can see, people of all parts of the United States, from every state of the Union, and Americans have returned from overseas to witness the events here in DC today. We'll be following every move, and of course we'll have every word of President Obama's address, which people expect to be every bit as memorable as John F. Kennedy's speech back in 1961. Expectations are at unprecedented levels as Mr. Obama prepares to replace, let's face it, the most unpopular president in recent memory. George W. Bush has ensured a very smooth transition, because that's really his last imprint of his time in power, and that's certainly something Mr. Obama has been keen to praise. Let me tell you, a short while ago at the White House, President and Mrs. Bush welcomed President-elect and Mrs. Obama. Again, a bit of a tradition on Inauguration Day. The couples, along with the vice presidents and senior figures in Congress, enjoyed a bit of coffee, and after about 45 minutes, they traveled together to the Capitol, a tradition which started, I think, back in 1837 when Martin Van Buren and Andrew Jackson traveled to the Capitol together. And you do wonder really what the kind of atmosphere in that limousine is like. Once or twice, and we'll discuss this maybe later, the atmosphere inside has not been particularly warm. I think today we've seen that these two men have made it a deal that they're going to get on together. At the US Capitol building is Adam Brooks, our correspondent, who's got a fantastic vantage point there. Adam, tell us what it's like.
Hugh, it is breathtaking up here. It's absolutely breathtaking. Behind me, over my shoulder, you can see the inaugural platform there, which is filling up now with the grandees of Washington. Over the next few minutes, we'll start seeing the former presidents come in, and they'll get seated. Jimmy Carter, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and their wives will all be there. Obama's family from Kenya are there too, sat right in the middle of the crowd there. Obama's cabinet, the people that he wants around him during his presidency, will all be there too. And in the next hour, we will see some musical performances. We'll see a prayer offered by a very famous evangelical pastor called Rick Warren. We'll see Aretha Franklin stand up and sing a patriotic song, My Country 'Tis of Thee. And then we will see Barack Obama lay his hand on the Lincoln Bible, the same Bible that Abraham Lincoln used back in 1861 when he was inaugurated, and he will take the presidential oath of office. And an hour from now, Barack Obama will be the 44th president of the United States. And as he sits there, and as his guests sit there, they look out over the National Mall at hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of people gathered in the freezing weather to be part of this absolutely extraordinary moment.
George H.W. Bush, I should say, to come down to Barbara Bush.
Adam Brooks there for us at the US Capitol, and he's there right near that west front where the swearing-in will take place. So he's got a pretty good view, and of course lots of very distinguished guests, as he was mentioning. We'll spot a few of them as we go through the events here. John Sopel is down among the crowds of millions on the National Mall. John, what are you picking up there?
Oh, Hugh, just the most immense sense of excitement, anticipation, and among the thousands, hundreds of thousands of African Americans here, a sense of pride and almost of disbelief that this day has finally arrived. It was an unbelievable election campaign, and now it has finally arrived that there is this African American president, and people have come from all over America to be here, and also, I've got to say, from all over the world. A huge international audience have come to Washington to witness this historic day. I left my hotel at 5 this morning, and you could just see crowds of people in the sub-zero temperatures, all heading towards the Capitol, all wanting to be part of this momentous day, talking about what Obama might say in his inaugural address, but less interested in the policy than just being part of this. And that is something, the excitement that Barack Obama has generated this past year, which comes to its culmination today. And that is why in sub-zero temperatures, although in bright sunshine, you have so many people who've come out in the cold to witness this.
John, enjoy it. We'll be back with you later on. John Sopel there in the National Mall with the enormous crowd, which is still swelling, by the way. We'll keep an eye on the best pictures, obviously we will. And in the meantime, let me introduce my distinguished panel here. I have the BBC's Matt Fry with me. Matt, good to have you with us, as ever, on these big presidential occasions. And to my right, two very eminent guests. Delighted to have you with us, gentlemen. Robert Dalek, the eminent presidential historian. Charles Ogletree, professor of law, who taught the Obamas when they were students. And you have a very particular vantage point and a great expertise to share with us. It's great to have you with us. I suppose I'd better start and ask Matt, my good friend, for your perspective on what is likely to happen in the next hour and the kind of message we're expecting from this new president.
Well, in terms of the events of the next hour, as Adam indicated, there's a kind of routine that everyone goes through. There's the vice presidential swearing in at 11:30, then there's the presidential swearing in at 12, then comes, of course, the much awaited speech. And what the speech given by an orator who is known for giving great speeches has to do is strike the right tone for a time of huge expectations, but also deep crisis. And we've been given a hint of what he will say from his advisors, who has been speaking to the press all day long, which is that he will strike more or less a similar tone to what JFK did in 1961, when he stood here on an even colder day in the snow. And he said famously, ask not what America can do for you, but what you can do for America. That culture of responsibility is something that he will also come up with. But here's a crucial point, Hugh. Barack Obama is a great speaker. He has made his political career on great speeches, but there are very few lines that anyone can remember from any of those beautifully recited, wonderfully crafted works of oratory. He will have to come up with a line today other than, yes, we can, that people can take home with them, because, as we can say now, he really must. Not just yes, we can, now he must, the man over there.
Robert Dalek, your particular expertise here in terms of the presidency. We heard about some of the key phrases of the past. They're very few and far between. FDR maybe, John F. Kennedy. Do you think, do you hope that he'll come up with that kind of memorable phrase today?
I do. I think you're absolutely right that this is what's almost compulsory. People remember 4 great inaugural addresses, and they are tied to the phrases that attach to them. Thomas Jefferson, who said we're all Federalists, all Republicans, speaking to the fact it was the first transition in political party history that occurred. Lincoln's famous second inaugural, charity for all, malice toward none. Roosevelt, nothing to fear but fear itself, and the Kennedy quote that you used before. So you're right, people don't remember the substance of what the presidents say, but there needs to be a compelling line, a phrase that captures the public imagination.
Crowds gathering and lots of the distinguished guests now filling up the stands where the swearing-in will take place. We caught a glimpse of Al Gore, the former vice president, a short while ago. I'm sure we'll catch a glimpse of a few more, including Jimmy Carter and some of the previous presidents, including Bill Clinton, when they take their place in a short while. Charles Ogletree, given your knowledge of the Obamas and the fact that you know both of them and you taught them, how was he preparing for this speech today?
Well, this is perhaps Barack Obama's most important speech, because each time the audience gets larger but the words become more critical, I think he's going to say, I've come a long way. And I want you to appreciate the fact that I understand the huge steps I have to take, but I want you to also understand that we're going to do this together. And there's going to be an appeal to all of America and all the world to say together we can. Not yes we can, but together we can do this, but I can't do it alone. And the other point, he's going to talk about being a descendant of a father from Kenya and a mother from Kansas, and what that means to the world. He's a part of a global community now, and I think his message will be global as well.
Given your knowledge of him, to what extent is he likely to be daunted by the terrible pile of problems that now are in his presidential in-tray? Is he a kind of rational, methodical person who approaches problems in that way? What is your experience of him?
He's cool hand Barack, and I say that saying that he was the first black to be president of Law Review. That was not easy to do. He ran for senator when he had been smacked down running for the House of Representatives, and he won. He ran for the United States presidency when everyone thought that there were greater candidates, more experience, and he won. So every time there's been a tough problem, he's tackled it. He's going to tackle the economy. He's going to tackle national security. He's going to be a tough president. And I'm sitting here as proud as I could be to see both Michelle and Barack holding that Bible of Lincoln today, and seeing Justice John Roberts, another Harvard graduate, give the oath. It's going to be a great day.
Very good pointer towards the ceremony for us, Charles. Thank you. And Robert, what is your take on the fact that he will put one hand on the Bible used by Lincoln in 1861? It's not been used since then.
That's right.
That symbolism will be all powerful.
Very powerful, and he understands that he is part of a great historical event, and he wants to invoke the memory of Lincoln, the memory of Franklin Roosevelt, the memory of John Kennedy, speaking to those presidents who continue to have this extraordinary hold on the country's imagination.
Matt?
You know, the other interesting thing, Robert, is that he is not just a president who has delved deeply into the words of the past from previous holders of this office to be inspired. He doesn't shy away from the grandest historical comparisons. He gave a little address on Sunday at the Lincoln Memorial, which I watched with my family. He's going to be borrowing from Lincoln, not just the Bible, but also some of the words. He took the same journey that Lincoln took to get to Washington before his inauguration. This is a man who does not shy away from the comparisons of history. And it's something that his friends and advisors, and of course also his spin meisters, will tell you again and again. Barack Obama has a certain impatience about him. There we go. Just let's quickly refer to this picture. We've got George Bush Sr. and Barbara Bush, the parents of the outgoing president, arriving. George Bush looking a little bit unsteady on his feet there, even though he did parachute out of a plane at the age of 80 on his birthday.
It's quite remarkable. They enjoyed supper last night in the White House with the outgoing president and his wife. That was their last supper there.
But you know what's really interesting here? I mean, and this reminds you of what kind of a newcomer Barack Obama is to the political scene. He unseated Hillary Clinton, who was seen to be Democratic royalty, who was the incumbent that everyone was waiting for. And also, he has managed to put the Bush political dynasty to shame to a large extent. This is a family here that we see represented by Bush Sr. and the former First Lady, who kind of had assumed that they would be dominating Republican politics for years to come. With the departure of George Bush, and as you referred to, his pretty low standing in the opinion polls, that will not happen. Now here, Jimmy Carter and his wife. Again, interesting example. When Jimmy Carter came to office, with a big majority and a huge majority, a supermajority in the Senate, the expectations for that man were enormous. A lesson from the history books. He had what many would argue Robert, I suppose, was a failed presidency. He did not do what he promised he would do. And one of the reasons, apparently, was that the Democrats on Capitol Hill, without whom you cannot govern, were not really Democrats on his side. They were so-called Dixiecrats.
By today, his reputation totally rehabilitated and enhanced. Are we likely to see George Bush in 20 or 30 years' time with his reputation in the same state as Jimmy Carter's today?
When I spoke to President George Bush earlier this year, he told me that he was an avid reader of history books and was no more interested in any president than Harry S. Truman, who left office in deep disgrace and was resurrected by the kind eye of history. And I think one should add that history is very kind, or rather, American public is very kind to its former presidents. Gerald Ford got a wonderful send-off when he passed away a few years ago. When Ronald Reagan died, no one mentioned the words Iran-Contra, for instance.
I don't want to be a scold, but George W. Bush is no Harry Truman. And I don't think he will ever establish the kind of reputation that Truman established in his post-presidential incarnation.
And look, there we have the Clintons, Hillary and Bill. I mean, for her, this is a bittersweet moment because she must have imagined so many times, must have rehearsed perhaps even that speech in her mind, what it would be like to be the first woman to assume this office. Well, she was defeated by Barack Obama, not just because of his oratory and his youth and the power of the newcomer, but also because he had an unprecedented organization of fundraising, of the so-called groundware of kind of his electoral troops scattered all over this country. And now, of course, she becomes Secretary of State, which is such an important job in order to hammer home the outward-looking message of America under Barack Obama to the rest of the world. It'll be sweet music to some and bitter to others.
But what I think Charles can speak to so effectively is the extraordinary self-confidence of this man. How could you assume the burdens of that office without having extraordinary self-confidence?
And that's why he's picking Hillary Clinton to be Secretary of State,
exactly.
And Larry Summers, people you think would not be in his cabinet. No. But Barack Obama says, I'm going to get the best and brightest people to lead this nation.
Let's pause for a second because we're seeing Mr. Bush Sr., President Bush Sr. there arriving, greeting some of his own colleagues and other former presidents as he makes his way in. We're going to take a little pause just to remind ourselves that there is intense interest around the world in what's going on here today. We mentioned Kenya, and we may pay a visit to Kenya in a short while. There is a very big community in London, of course, back in Britain, who are watching this with great interest. Lizo Mazimba is in Tottenham. Lizo, what are they saying there?
Well, I can tell you here that not only are the events in America having a huge reverberation around the United States, they're also having a massive impact, of course, here in London, where the waves of euphoria coming out of Washington are definitely being felt. I'm at the Bernie Glatz Arts Centre in North London, joined by Guardian columnist Hannah Poole and Baroness Young. First of all, Hannah, what difference do you think today's inauguration is going to make for ethnic minorities here in the UK?
I think you only have to look at the scenes and the screens globally to see what a huge difference that basically black people have been waiting for this for a very long time.
And Baroness Young, you're an expert in diversity. We've seen some black figures and figures from ethnic minorities reaching the top in areas like sport and arts and culture, but reaching the top in politics in America, what difference will this have over here in the UK?
Well, I think there's a lot of lessons we can learn, particularly about how we organise, about how we work together to support candidates. And with the launch of Bernie's list today here at the Bernie Grant Arts Centre, I think we've taken a great step forward. That list will help people who have aspirations to get involved in politics, actually to give them the support financially and morally to do that.
Well, thank you very much, Baroness Young and Hannah Poole. And I can tell you people here are going to be eagerly watching and listening to Barack Obama's inauguration speech, which was more so than so many other previous presidents. They feel he has a message that not only speaks to people in America, but will also speak to people here in the UK.
Lizo, thank you very much. Here in Washington, we're within minutes of the official ceremony getting underway. And let me just give you a little bit of guidance as to the timings. There's lots of the former presidents now are being introduced to the vast crowd here on the west front of the Capitol. In about 10 minutes' time, the formal ceremony will start. There'll be some musical items, and we'll then move towards the inauguration of the Vice President Biden. After that, after another few items of music, we'll move on to the centerpiece of today's events, which is the inauguration of Barack Obama as 44th president. After that happens, we'll have the inaugural address. Very great expectation for that address and what kind of tone he'll set and what the message will be. What is the message that he's crafted? And after that, Mr. Obama's presidency will begin. He'll go back into the Capitol for lunch with lots of the distinguished guests, members of Congress, of course, and then make his way along on that very big parade which goes down to the White House during the afternoon here in Washington. Katty Kay is at the White House where that parade will pass and where the president will be surveying the parade. Katty, what's the atmosphere like there?
Well, it's starting to build up, Hugh. You've got the stands all around me now, filling up with dignitaries, people that have got tickets to come and watch Barack Obama, to watch the parade go past here. 10,000 people will take part in this parade from all the 50 states. It's 1.5 miles from the Capitol to here at the White House. Barack Obama will also take that route. He'll take about half an hour to get from up there. Then he'll come here to the White House. He'll watch the parade for about an hour, and then he will go into the White House just behind me as President of the United States. And that, I think, Hugh, will be when it really hits him. That's the moment when he goes into the office, Oval Office, not just as the president-elect, not just as a candidate for the presidency, but actually as the president at this time of great crisis, both domestically and abroad, with the full weight of this country's expectations on his shoulders. So it's going to be very interesting to watch not just him and the parade, but those few moments when he first goes into the White House as America's president.
Katty, thank you very much. Katty, you're there near the White House, ready for when that parade starts after the inauguration. The fanfares are sounding as more of the guests are introduced. And very soon we'll be seeing members of the Obama family.
President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton, and Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton.
After Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, the incoming Secretary of State, they've been introduced now formally to this enormous crowd. And as I say, once the former presidents are in place, we'll see members of the families of Joe Biden and Barack Obama being introduced themselves. Real sense of excitement building up. Let's join John Sokol once again on the National Mall.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, and you can hear the crowds. It's there really is a party atmosphere of people sort of cheering when they see someone they like. I've got to say there was a certain amount of booing around me when George W. Bush's face was shown on the big screens here. But apparently we're hearing that some of the security entrances into the area on the Mall have been closed because there are still so many people wanting to come in and witness this occasion. And all I can see behind me, Hugh, for about a mile, I guess, from where I am down to the Capitol building, is just a sea of humanity, endless stars and stripes flags, and everywhere you can see people wearing Obama hats, Obama t-shirts. There's certainly one growth area in this US economy, and that is the sellers of Obama memorabilia here in Washington, because they have been doing a roaring trade. And if they alone could rebuild the economy, refloat it, then America would be looking fine. But down behind me, there is a great party atmosphere, very colourful. Even though people are swaddled against the cold, they are just lapping every single moment of this up, and we haven't even got to the main bit yet.
The image says it all, really, doesn't it? They were talking about 1.5 million back in 1965 when Lyndon Johnson was inaugurated here. But really today it looks way beyond that. An enormous crowd.
And you've got to remember, Hugh, that the District of Columbia is a city of 600,000 people. I mean, the number of people watching this on the Mall here is 5 times, 6 times, perhaps even 7 times the original population of this city. I mean, and it's interesting actually, I got up before dawn this morning, which I have to say I don't normally do, and the streets were already packed with people streaming down here. And compare this to the inauguration of 2004, there were hardly any African-American faces in the crowd then. There are hundreds of thousands of them. And they're, of course, 2 of those African-American faces that are going to become incredibly famous. the two Obama children whose lives have changed forever in the last few weeks. Maya and Sasha, who go to school just at the end of our road, which means that every morning we have a little Secret Service escort. And one of my daughters said, can I go to school with them so I can have a sleepover at the White House? And I had to inform her that that was very unlikely to happen. But anyway, there they are.
It's a good moment to bring in our other distinguished guest today, Kenneth Mack, Professor of Law, but a friend of the Obamas. And Ken, good to have you with us. How is this family going to cope with this kind of pressure?
It's just going to be enormous. I can't imagine it. It's been a long time since there have been small children in the White House, of course. But they've coped with a lot of things during the course of the campaign, having to decide that their children weren't going to miss one day of school during the entire campaign process, having to bring in-laws and other friends in to take care of the children. And let's face it, these are very bright children. They're very resilient. And it's clear that they've been foremost in their parents' mind through this process. And it's going to be tough, but they're going to do an excellent job.
Impossible balance really to maintain. Ken, I'll be back with you in a second because we're just watching images here of Laura Bush and making her way in. Her last day, her last morning as First Lady.
Liz Cheney next to her, the wife of the outgoing Vice President, who's in a wheelchair today because, and this is rather poignant, he tore his muscles, did Dick Cheney, while trying to move boxes into his new house on the other side of the Potomac River in Virginia.
The visit to church this morning, which took place before the convoy got underway, Ken, I'm just wondering again, in what sense has the family been able to prepare, even with an element of privacy, for today's event? Because every family needs a little bit of private space, doesn't it?
Yes, without a doubt. And they've, from what I can say, they've been very, very good at preserving that private space, at making the time for reflection as a family. And it's going to be tough. There's been nothing like this.
Listen to that.
One little detail which is wonderful, Hugh, the older daughter, who's I think 10, was at the Lincoln Memorial with her father and her mother just the other day, and they looked at all the speeches, the excerpts from the Gettysburg Address, and she looked at her dad and she said, big speech next week, Dad. First African-American president. And then she added, better be good.
Better be good. Well, I think she probably knows it's going to be good.
Well, she's heard her father speak over and over again. But what's interesting is, and you referred to this earlier, that they're trying to preserve as much normality for their children as possible. So no school days missed. Michelle Obama will be down at that school checking on homework and, you know, making sure that they have as normal a life as you can possibly have in that house. And I think it's to have young children in the White House again, not since the Kennedy have we had children of that age, will just lift everyone's spirit. And I think lifting of spirits is something really quite important at the moment because, you know, the Dow's down, the Nasdaq's down, the mood is down, but there's an enormous amount of goodwill that greets this first family, and one could perhaps say that never has a first family needed so much goodwill in order to govern.
Mrs. Bennett, Mrs. Boehner, and Republican Staff Director of the U.S. Senate Committee on Rules and Administration, Mary Suit Jones.
Hey, everybody.
The official welcome for the outgoing First Lady and Mrs. Cheney. And just after the inauguration, we will see President and Mrs. Bush leave the Capitol from the other side of the building. And we'll have that customary shot in the helicopter where they will leave and go to follow their post-presidential lives. So as the atmosphere builds at the Capitol, let's join Adam Brooks in his front row seat once again.
Yes, Hugh, it's remarkable here. We're just seeing the former presidents coming in and getting seated. We've seen Bill Clinton come in, Hillary Clinton come in. The whole inaugural platform is starting to fill up. Obama's Kenyan family, a few members of them are seated in the middle there, right in the middle of the crowd. You can see also the performers, Yitzhak Perlman and Yo-Yo Ma, just up above the inaugural platform, waiting to give their musical performance. Absolutely electric atmosphere. Things are running a little bit behind time, but it really is an extraordinary moment here, and things are just beginning to get going now.
Adam, thank you very much. As you say, it's slipping a little the time, but I think people are very patient. Lots of people have waited for this moment for a very long time. We next expect to see Michelle Obama and Dr. Jill Biden, who's Joe Biden's wife, being introduced formally. And I think that as soon as Michelle Obama appears, this crowd will erupt. The pressure on her, Robert, Alec, as well, when you think of the role of the First Lady, which has changed with every presidency, how do you suspect she'll tackle it?
Well, I imagine, like her husband, she knows a great deal of history, and she'll recall the example of Eleanor Roosevelt, who was the first lady to really put an extraordinary mark on that office and define it as something quite special. And I imagine she's going to, like her husband, she's going to have to live up to expectations. But you know, listening to what you were saying before, what I'm so struck by is how much this is a democratic moment with a small d. Why do they hold this outside? Why out in the cold? So the masses, the great crowd, can see the whole thing.
So there we have Michelle Obama also, she walking in next to Jill Biden. Of course, everyone has been waiting, especially the 155 million women in this country, what dress she's going to wear. And there we have it. Gold glitter, I think, is perhaps under-describing it, or not doing it justice. But another quick note, by the way, we saw earlier the first mother-in-law, who is also going to move into the White House, Mrs. Robinson, and Michelle's mother. We'll see a picture of her again later on. But that's also, I think, the first time that's happened, that a mother-in-law's moved into the White House. She'll be keeping a close eye on the kids while Michelle Obama will be undergoing her duties as First Lady. And also, I think, you know, it's worth remembering that this isn't just about them. It's also, this whole ceremony, which happens every 4 years, is a sort of renewal of the vows of the American people with their democracy.
Exactly.
And that amazing scene behind us, that there, you could describe as the altar of that democracy, where those vows with all the prenup clauses are going to be renewed. And it is an astonishingly inspiring moment when you see that many people turn up for this event. And I don't think Washington has ever seen such a huge crowd.
This is extraordinary.
The outgoing President, George W. Bush, who's arrived at the US Capitol, he too will be formally introduced to this crowd. And he will sit just a few feet away from the new president as he's sworn in.
We talk a lot about his low approval ratings, we talk a lot about his very controversial time in office, but it must be said, and Barack Obama himself has said this, that he has been one of the most gracious incumbent presidents in order to organize a smooth transition. And, you know, he has been given, Barack Obama, access to any number of things in the White House, which quite frankly weren't really necessary until a particular moment. So I think George Bush realizes that he leaves this country and leaves Washington at an extremely delicate time. He has quite a lot to answer for himself. He sort of acknowledged that the other day, although he still hopes that the sober eye of history will shed a tear of kindness for him at some stage in the future. But the point is that the crisis that Obama inherits with his entire family will be, I think, in many ways, will actually help him to govern, because expectations are pretty low. Patience is pretty high, and even conservatives who loathe the idea of a liberal president in the White House, who loathe the idea of government interfering in the process of politics and spending too much, are basically crawling to government saying, we are in a fetal position, help us out here. And I've come across this over and over again in recent weeks as I've traveled around the country, that Republicans, perhaps more than ever before, are prepared to give a Democrat president the benefit of the doubt. There we have Michelle Obama greeting various members in the crowd. There's Bill Clinton, of course, someone that she has met on several occasions before. You kind of wonder what they say to each other. She's as tall as he is, of course. Bill Clinton is a tall man, but Michelle Obama is not that much shorter.
Crowd waits for the arrival of George W. Bush. The last time, I think, Matt, that he'll hear "Hail to the Chief" when he appears in public. So distinctive moment for him, certainly. And it will be interesting to see what the response of the crowd will be when he appears.
But you know, I think what Matt was saying, there's a whole sense of national unity. In times of crisis, you crave that, you want that. And I think both Mr. Bush and Mr. Obama have been very mindful of that. And it's essential now. The country should feel it's pulling together to overcome its problems.
Still waiting here for the arrival of George W. Bush. And after his arrival, we may pop out to the mall again to see what's going on and what people are saying just a few minutes before this ceremony begins. And as we were saying a short while ago, timings have slipped just a little bit, but they'll be doing their best to get this swearing in done by noon. Noon is the time when the transfer of power takes place.
And I think after today's extraordinary party is over and the streets have been swept and the champagne bottles, the empty ones, taken away, you can expect Barack Obama to start office with a bang and not a whimper. There is so much that he needs to introduce in terms of legislation, needs to get hammered down on Capitol Hill, especially on the economic front. We saw Dick Cheney arrive just now a minute ago. That was interesting because Dick Cheney has been perhaps slightly less gracious towards the new president than the still current president, George Bush. He has publicly disagreed with some of the things that Barack Obama has said, which is not necessarily vice presidential fault.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the Honorable George Walker Bush, and the Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney, accompanied by Senate Republican leader Senator Mitch McConnell, Senator Robert Bennett, House Republican leader Representative John Boehner, and Secretary for the Minority, David Chiappa.
I saw you up there.
All right, gentlemen.
Vice President, keep up the good work.
Hail to the chief. The outgoing president, George W. Bush, takes his place here for the inauguration of his successor, Barack Obama. So what was the response in the crowd? Let's try and join the BBC's Clive Myrie, who's down there among the millions who've gathered today. Clive.
That's right, Hugh. Yes, I'm right in the middle of the Mall, surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people waiting for that special moment coming up in a few minutes when Barack Obama will be inaugurated as the 44th president. I have to say that when George W. Bush's name was mentioned and he was introduced to the crowd, there were muted boos here by the people around me, but not as loud as perhaps some people might have expected. There is still a measure of respect that is accorded the president here until, of course, he leaves office. I'm joined here by some people in the crowd. One young lady here has come a long way. Where have you come from?
I've come from Tampa, Florida.
You've come all the way from Florida. The weather's not as hot here as it is down there.
No, it isn't.
Why was it so important for you to make this journey and to come here today?
As an African American, I am so happy and so pleased to be a part of this historical event. We have the first African American president, Barack Obama.
Woo! Woo! Did you think you would ever see this in your lifetime?
There was possibly. Hope. There was hope. There was hope.
You always had hope.
Yes, I had hope.
We're very thankful for this opportunity to actually be here in the midst, even though we're not a part of the actual ceremony, just being here amongst people who are supporters of Obama. Very appreciative of it, so it's good.
But we've got people here who've traveled from Africa, from South America, from all over the world. Is that surprising to you that Obama's appeal has reached so far across the globe?
That is not surprising to me because Barack Obama has such a great characteristic, and he is for all the people, not just African Americans, but all the people. And we just love him and we support him.
Okay, well, it seems to have come out now. With that, back to you, Hugh.
The first glimpse of the man who's going to be the next president of the United States.
The Vice President-elect of the United States, Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
So Joe Biden, after a very, very long political career and 2 runs at the presidency, finds that he's now going to be in the White House, but as vice president. And Matt, a pretty varied and colourful career in many ways.
Indeed. Let me just remind you of what another former vice president said about this job. This was John Nance Garner, I think, back in the 1920s it was, who said this job isn't worth a pitcher of warm spit. Some people think he might have used another bodily fluid. The point is that has changed in many ways. Dick Cheney, the man who is disliked by many Americans, the man who we just saw on screen earlier, is the man who's perhaps raised the office of vice president to something more powerful than it has ever been before. And although Joe Biden will not upstage his boss, Barack Obama, in any way, and Barack Obama chose Joe Biden perhaps because he won't upstage him, the fact is that he will form a very important part of Team Obama, of that new team that is going to govern from the White House. He has enormous foreign policy experience. I wouldn't be surprised if Hillary Clinton was a little bit nervous about that experience, because she, of course, will be in charge of selling American diplomacy around the world. Interestingly enough, he was in Iraq only last week, doing what future secretaries of state will do, doing what he might carry on doing when he actually becomes vice president. He is an enormous rock of stability and experience to Barack Obama, who's after all only 47 years old, and as we famously found out during the election campaign, did not have that much foreign policy experience. So choosing Joe Biden, having him by his side, completes the Obama picture of this presidency.
What would be the difference between a Biden and a Cheney vice presidency?
Well, I think first I echo the point about the vice presidency. Woodrow Wilson said there's nothing to say about the vice presidency, and after you've said that, there's nothing more to say. But it's changed, dramatically changed. And it began in many ways with Richard Nixon, who under Eisenhower did a lot of travel and was very much invested in Cold War issues. But to answer your question, I think Biden, as you were saying, Matt, will be very mindful of the fact that he cannot eclipse Obama. He's got to be in his shadow. On the other hand, he does have extraordinary experience, especially in foreign policy, and he's going to be a pillar of support for this administration. It's an artistry, though. He's got to find a way to present his information without overstepping the bounds.
The Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Senator Dianne Feinstein, Senator Robert Bennett, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi,
Dianne Feinstein of California, who will be in charge of this ceremony today. She's the senior congressional figure who's been handling this organization for the ceremony, and she'll be, in effect, the mistress of ceremonies.
I decided to come back.
And this is the formal start now of the inauguration ceremony for this 44th president.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, Barack H. Obama.
say the applause on our rooftop here just near the Capitol is deafening. That is a crowd of millions applauding their new leader. And this is the realization of that dream that Martin Luther King spoke about in the early 1960s.
Notice also, Hugh, that the announcer announced him as Barack H. Obama. H, of course, stands for Hussein. When he takes the oath of office, he will say Barack Hussein Obama. That middle name has been very controversial throughout the campaign, but it sends an enormously important signal to many people around the world, and especially in the Middle East. A signal that precedes today's speech, that precedes any policy that comes from this White House.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Dianne Feinstein.
Mr. President and Vice President, Mr. President-elect and Vice President-elect, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inauguration of the 44th President of the United States of America. The world is watching today as our great democracy engages in this peaceful transition of power. Here on the National Mall, where we remember the founders of our nation and those who fought to make it free, we gather to etch another line in the solid stone of history. The freedom of a people to choose its leaders is the root of liberty. In a world where political strife is too often settled with violence, we come here every 4 years to bestow the power of the presidency upon our democratically elected leader. Those who doubt the supremacy of the ballot over the bullet can never diminish the power engendered by nonviolent struggles for justice and equality, like the one that made this day possible. No triumph tainted by brutality could ever match the sweet victory of this hour and what it means to those who marched and died to make it a reality. Our work is not yet finished, but future generations will mark this morning as the turning point for real and necessary change in our nation. They will look back and remember that this was the moment when the dream that once echoed across history from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial finally reached the walls of the White House. In that spirit, we today not only inaugurate a new administration, we pledge ourselves to the hope, the vision, the unity, and the renewed call to greatness inspired by the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama. Thank you, and God bless America. At this time, I call upon Dr. Rick Warren, pastor of the Saddleback Church in Lake Forest, California, to provide the invocation.
Let us pray. Almighty God, our Father, everything we see and everything we can't see exists because of you alone. It all comes from you. It all belongs to you. It all exists for your glory. History is your story. The scripture tells us, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one. And you are the compassionate and merciful one, and you are loving to everyone you have made." Now today, we rejoice not only in America's peaceful transfer of power for the 44th time, we celebrate a hinge point of history with the inauguration of our first African-American President of the United States. We are so grateful to live in this land, a land of unequaled possibility, where the son of an African immigrant can rise to the highest level of our leadership. And we know today that Dr. King and a great cloud of witnesses are shouting in heaven, give to our new president, Barack Obama, the wisdom to lead us with humility, the courage to lead us with integrity, the compassion to lead us with generosity. Bless and protect him, his family, Vice President Biden, the cabinet, and every one of our freely elected leaders. Help us, oh God, to remember that we are Americans, united not by race or religion or blood, but to our commitment to freedom and justice for all. When we focus on ourselves, when we fight each other, when we forget you, forgive us. When we presume that our greatness and our prosperity is ours alone, forgive us. When we fail to treat our fellow human beings and all the earth with the respect that they deserve, forgive us. And as we face these difficult days ahead, may we have a new birth of clarity in our aims, responsibility in our actions, humility in our approaches, and civility in our attitudes, even when we differ. Help us to share, to serve, and to seek the common good of all. May all people of goodwill today join together to work for a more just, a more healthy, and a more prosperous nation and a peaceful planet. And may we never forget that one day all nations and all people will stand accountable before you. We now commit our new president and his wife, Michelle, and his daughters, Malia and Sasha, into your loving care. I humbly ask this in the name of the one who changed my life, Yeshua, Isa, Jesus, Jesus, who taught us to pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Pastor Rick Warren of California, conservative evangelical minister, seen as a very controversial choice, Matt, by Barack Obama.
Indeed, Hugh. I mean, one cannot overstate, rather, the importance of what he has just done. He effectively becomes the chaplain of the nation in this inaugural prayer. But this is a man who is very much opposed to gay marriage, very much opposed to abortion, and therefore very controversial in the rank and file of the movement that helped to get Barack Obama elected. The first test of his commitments to his base. Here we have Aretha Franklin now singing the national anthem.
I can't treat it of the sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, and where my father
Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin.
From Utah, the Honorable Robert Bennett.
Delighting the crowd there. Dianne Feinstein moving the ceremony along as we move towards the inauguration of Vice President Biden.
Also, one quick note on that, Shu. I mean, Aretha Franklin there, an African-American woman singing on the altar of democracy on a building, the Capitol that was built by African-American slaves. African-Americans have had so many roles in American history, but never the role of president.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the
duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office upon which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you, Mr. Justice.
The oath administered by Associate Justice John Paul Stevens, who's 88, the longest-serving member of the Supreme Court. Joe Biden is now Vice President of the United States.
And of course, Hugh, there have been too many times in American history when the Vice President and his oath then became the presidential oath at some stage in a term of office, either because of assassination or because of resignation. One hopes that that never has to come and pass, but it has passed too many times in the history of this nation. Again, it's because of that that Barack Obama has had an unprecedented amount of security. Even at the very beginning of his presidential campaign, he received Secret Service agents or Secret Service security detail when the other candidates had not. It gives you some idea of the worries that surround the office, and also especially this man.
Perlman, violinist. Anthony McGill, clarinetist. Yo-Yo Ma, cellist. And Gabriela Montero, pianist, performing Air and Simple Gifts, a composition arranged for this occasion by John Williams.
So the special composition by John Williams with 4 of the most gifted musicians in the world, and all of this, of course, part of a program that has been approved by Mr. Obama himself. And Matt, we'll enjoy the music in a second. Just a little thought here about Barack Obama himself, now that Joe Biden's been sworn in and he's minutes away of assuming the powers of the presidency.
He is indeed. This will happen, well, just after 12:30. We're running slightly late, of course, on these proceedings. Then he will have lunch on Capitol Hill with members of Congress, and then we have the beginning of the parade. In between all that all-important presidential speech. Little note of history here, the longest speech ever given by a new president, President Harrison in 1841, was so long, and he was wearing no hat, and he decided to go to all the inaugural balls, that he caught a cold, then he caught pneumonia, and then he died a month later. That is not going to happen this time round. But what will happen is that the world and America will listen to every single word this man has to say, and to see whether he can turn his words into the kind of music that we're hearing right now.
Cellist Yo-Yo Ma with Itzhak Perlman, Gabriela Montero and Anthony McGill performing this piece by John Williams.
Yeah, sure.
The piece specially commissioned and composed by John Williams as we approach the moment when the presidential inauguration will take place. Very unusually, it has turned noon here in Washington, D.C. The inauguration with the Chief Justice, who will be called up in a second, is meant to have happened just a few minutes before noon.
We're running late, Hugh. We don't normally run late for inaugurations, and certainly the last White House prided itself on its punctuality. But now everyone is standing for what I think will be that key moment, the swearing in of the 44th President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama. There he is. This is a moment that even he, in his greatest ambitions, cannot have imagined just 3 or 4 years ago.
I am. I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will execute the office of President to the United States faithfully.
That I will execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States faithfully.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President. All the best wishes.
present the 44th President of these United States, Barack Obama.
Thank you. Thank you. My fellow citizens, I stand here today humbled by the task before us, grateful for the trust you have bestowed, mindful of the sacrifices borne by our ancestors. I thank President Bush for his service to our nation. As well as the generosity and cooperation he has shown throughout this transition. 44 Americans have now taken the presidential oath. The words have been spoken during rising tides of prosperity and the still waters of peace. Yet, every so often, the oath is taken amidst gathering clouds and raging storms. At these moments, America has carried on not simply because of the skill or vision of those in high office, but because we, the people, have remained faithful to the ideals of our forebears and true to our founding documents. So it has been, so it must be with this generation of Americans. That we are in the midst of crisis is now well understood. Our nation is at war against a far-reaching network of violence and hatred. Our economy is badly weakened, a consequence of greed and irresponsibility on the part of some, but also our collective failure to make hard choices and prepare the nation for a new age. Homes have been lost, jobs shed, businesses shuttered. Our health care is too costly, our schools fail too many, and each day brings further evidence that the ways we use energy strengthen our adversaries and threaten our planet. These are the indicators of crisis, subject to data and statistics. Less measurable, but no less profound, is a sapping of confidence across our land. A nagging fear that America's decline is inevitable, that the next generation must lower its sights. Today, I say to you that the challenges we face are real. They are serious and they are many. They will not be met easily or in a short span of time. But know this, America, they will be met. On this day, we gather because we have chosen hope over fear, unity of purpose over conflict and discord. On this day, we come to proclaim an end to the petty grievances and false promises, the recriminations and worn-out dogmas that for far too long have strangled our politics. We remain a young nation, but in the words of Scripture, the time has come to set aside childish things. The time has come to reaffirm our enduring spirit, to choose our better history, to carry forward that precious gift, that noble idea passed on from generation to generation, the God-given promise that all are equal, all are free, and all deserve a chance to pursue their full measure of happiness. In reaffirming the greatness of our nation, we understand that greatness is never a given. It must be earned. Our journey has never been one of shortcuts or settling for less. It has not been the path for the faint-hearted, for those who prefer leisure over work or seek only the pleasures of riches and fame. Rather, it has been the risk-takers, the doers, the makers of things, some celebrated, but more often men and women obscure in their labor, who have carried us up the long, rugged path towards prosperity and freedom. For us, they packed up their few worldly possessions and traveled across oceans in search of a new life. For us, they toiled in sweatshops and settled the West, endured the lash of the whip, and plowed the hard earth. For us, they fought and died in places like Concord and Gettysburg, Normandy, and Quai San. Time and again, these men and women struggled and sacrificed and worked till their hands were raw so that we might live a better life. They saw America as bigger than the sum of our individual ambitions, greater than all the differences of birth or wealth or faction. This is the journey we continue today. We remain the most prosperous, powerful nation on earth. Our workers are no less productive than when this crisis began. Our minds are no less inventive, our goods and services no less needed than they were last week or last month or last year. Our capacity remains undiminished, but our time of standing pat, of protecting narrow interests and putting off unpleasant decisions, that time has surely passed. Starting today, we must pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and begin again the work of remaking America. For everywhere we look, there is work to be done. The state of our economy calls for action, bold and swift, and we will act, not only to create new jobs, but to lay a new foundation for growth. We will build the roads and bridges, the electric grids and digital lines that feed our commerce and bind us together. We will restore science to its rightful place, and wield technology's wonders to raise healthcare's quality and lower its cost. We will harness the sun and the winds and the soil to fuel our cars and run our factories, and we will transform our schools and colleges and universities to meet the demands of a new age. All this we can do. All this we will do. Now, there are some who question the scale of our ambitions, who suggest that our system cannot tolerate too many big plans. Their memories are short, for they have forgotten what this country has already done, what free men and women can achieve when imagination is joined to common purpose and necessity to courage. What the cynics fail to understand is that the ground has shifted beneath them, that the stale political arguments that have consumed us for so long no longer apply. The question we ask today is not whether our government is too big or too small, but whether it works, whether it helps families find jobs at a decent wage, care they can afford, a retirement that is dignified. Where the answer is yes, we intend to move forward. Where the answer is no, programs will end. And those of us who manage the public's dollars will be held to account to spend wisely, reform bad habits, and do our business in the light of day, because only then can we restore the vital trust between a people and their government. Nor is the question before us whether the market is a force for good or ill. Its power to generate wealth and expand freedom is unmatched. But this crisis has reminded us that without a watchful eye, the market can spin out of control. The nation cannot prosper long when it favors only the prosperous. The success of our economy has always depended not just on the size of our gross domestic product, but on the reach of our prosperity, on the ability to extend opportunity to every willing heart, not out of charity, but because it is the surest route to our common good. As for our common defense, we reject as false the choice between our safety and our ideals. Our founding fathers, faced with perils that we can scarcely imagine, drafted a charter to assure the rule of law and the rights of man, a charter expanded by the blood of generations. Those ideals still light the world, and we will not give them up for expedience' sake. And so, to all the other peoples and governments who are watching today, from the grandest capitals to the small village where my father was born, know that America is a friend of each nation and every man, woman, and child who seeks a future of peace and dignity, and we are ready to lead once more. Recall that earlier generations faced down fascism and communism, not just with missiles and tanks, but with the sturdy alliances and enduring convictions. They understood that our power alone cannot protect us, nor does it entitle us to do as we please. Instead, they knew that our power grows through its prudent use. Our security emanates from the justness of our cause, the force of our example, the tempering qualities of humility and restraint. We are the keepers of this legacy. Guided by these principles once more, we can meet those new threats that demand even greater effort, even greater cooperation and understanding between nations. We will begin to responsibly leave Iraq to its people and forge a hard-earned peace in Afghanistan. With old friends and former foes, we will work tirelessly to lessen the nuclear threat and roll back the specter of a warming planet. We will not apologize for our way of life, nor will we waver in its defense. And for those who seek to advance their aims by inducing terror and slaughtering innocents, we say to you now that our spirit is stronger and cannot be broken. You cannot outlast us, and we will defeat you. For we know that our patchwork heritage is a strength, not a weakness. We are a nation of Christians and Muslims, Jews and Hindus, and non-believers. We are shaped by every language and culture, drawn from every end of this earth. And because we have tasted the bitter swill of civil war and segregation and emerged from that dark chapter stronger and more united, we cannot help but believe that the old hatreds shall someday pass, that the lines of tribes shall soon dissolve, that as the world grows smaller, our common humanity shall reveal itself, and that America must play its role in ushering in a new era of peace. To the Muslim world, we seek a new way forward based on mutual interest and mutual respect. To those leaders around the globe who seek to sow conflict or blame their society's ills on the West, know that your people will judge you on what you can build, not what you destroy. To those who cling to power through corruption and deceit and the silencing of dissent, know that you are on the wrong side of history, but that we will extend a hand if you are willing to unclench your fist. To the people of poor nations, we pledge to work alongside you to make your farms flourish and let clean waters flow, to nourish starved bodies and feed hungry minds. And to those nations like ours that enjoy relative plenty, we say we can no longer afford indifference to the suffering outside our borders, nor can we consume the world's resources without regard to effect. For the world has changed, and we must change with it. As we consider the road that unfolds before us, we will remember with humble gratitude those brave Americans who, at this very hour, patrol far-off deserts and distant mountains. They have something to tell us, just as the fallen heroes who lie in Arlington whisper through the ages. We honor them not only because they are the guardians of our liberty, but because they embody the spirit of service, a willingness to find meaning in something greater than themselves. And yet, at this moment, a moment that will define a generation, it is precisely this spirit that must inhabit us all. For as much as government can do and must do, it is ultimately the faith and determination of the American people upon which this nation relies. It is the kindness to take in a stranger when the levees break, the selflessness of workers who would rather cut their hours than see a friend lose their job, which sees us through our darkest hours. It is the firefighter's courage to storm a stairway filled with smoke, but also a parent's willingness to nurture a child that finally decides our fate. Our challenges may be new. The instruments with which we meet them may be new. But those values upon which our success depends, honesty and hard work, courage and fair play, tolerance and curiosity, loyalty and patriotism, these things are old. These things are true. They have been the quiet force of progress throughout our history. What is demanded then is a return to these truths. What is required of us now is a new era of responsibility, a recognition on the part of every American that we have duties to ourselves, our nation, and the world, duties that we do not grudgingly accept, but rather seize gladly, firm in the knowledge that there is nothing so satisfying to the spirit, so defining of our character, than giving our all to a difficult task. This is the price and the promise of citizenship. This is the source of our confidence, the knowledge that God calls on us to shape an uncertain destiny. This is the meaning of our liberty and our creed, why men and women and children of every race and every faith can join in celebration across this magnificent mall, and why a man whose father less than 60 years ago might not have been served at a local restaurant can now stand before you to take a most sacred oath. So let us mark this day with remembrance of who we are and how far we have traveled. In the year of America's birth, in the coldest of months, a small band of patriots huddled by dying campfires on the shores of an icy river. The capital was abandoned. The enemy was advancing. The snow was stained with blood. At a moment when the outcome of our revolution was most in doubt, the father of our nation ordered these words be read to the people. Let it be told to the future world that in the depth of winter, when nothing but hope and virtue could survive, that the city and the country, alarmed at one common danger, came forth to meet it. America, in the face of our common dangers, in this winter of our hardship, let us remember these timeless words. With hope and virtue, let us brave once more the icy currents and endure what storms may come. Let it be said by our children's children that when we were tested, we refused to let this journey end, that we did not turn back nor did we falter. And with eyes fixed on the horizon and God's grace upon us, we carried forth that great gift of freedom and delivered it safely to future generations. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
The immense crowd salutes and applauds the 44th President, Barack Obama, after that inaugural address on the west front of the Capitol.
And of course, it was full of the soaring oratory that you expect from this man, but I think most crucially, Hugh, it struck an almost business-like tone. This is a man who takes office, has taken office, who will be sitting in the Oval Office tomorrow morning with an enormous in-tray of problems. And I think what he wants to do, what he's tried to do for recent months actually, is get away from this impression that he is just very, very good with words. He also has to be very, very good at running this country. And what he's basically told us here is that he will take this crisis and turn it into an opportunity, all the while reminding us that 60 years ago, someone like him would not have been served in a restaurant in many states of this country. And when he said that in this speech, he got the biggest round of applause of the day so far.
The ceremony is not over. After he's greeted his Vice President and other members there will be what is now the traditional poetry reading, after which the ceremony will draw to a close.
I have the distinct pleasure of introducing an American poet, Elizabeth Alexander.
Praise Song for the Day. Each day we go about our business, walking past each other, catching each other's eyes or not, about to speak or speaking. All about us is noise. All about us is noise and bramble, thorn and din, each one of our ancestors on our tongues. Someone is stitching up a hem, darning a hole in a uniform, patching a tire, repairing the things in need of repair. Someone is trying to make music somewhere with a pair of wooden spoons on an oil drum, with cello, boombox, harmonica, voice. A woman and her son wait for the bus. A farmer considers the changing sky, A teacher says, take out your pencils, begin. We encounter each other in words, words spiny or smooth, whispered or declaimed, words to consider, reconsider. We cross dirt roads and highways that mark the will of someone and then others who said, I need to see what's on the other side. I know there's something better down the road. We need to find a place where we are safe. We walk into that which we cannot yet see. Say it plain, that many have died for this day. Sing the names of the dead who brought us here, who laid the train tracks, raised the bridges, picked the cotton and the lettuce, built brick by brick the glittering edifices they would then keep clean and work inside of. Praise song for struggle. Praise song for the day. Praise song for every hand-lettered sign, the figuring it out at kitchen tables. Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself. Others by first do no harm or take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? Love beyond marital, filial, national. Love that casts a widening pool of light. Love with no need to preempt grievance. In today's sharp sparkle, this winter air, anything can be made, any sentence begun. On the brink, on the brim, on the cusp. Praise song for walking forward in that light.
And now it's my privilege to introduce the Reverend Dr. Joseph E. Lowry to deliver the benediction.
God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far along the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to thee, O God, and true to our native land. We truly give thanks for the glorious experience we've shared this day. We pray now, O Lord, for your blessing upon thy servant, Barack Obama, the 44th President of these United States, his family, and his administration. He has come to this high office at a low moment in the national and indeed the global fiscal climate. But because we know you got the whole world in your hands, we pray for not only our nation, but for the community of nations. Our faith does not shrink, though pressed by the flood of mortal ills. For we know that, Lord, you're able and you're willing to work through faithful leadership to restore stability mend our brokenness, heal our wounds, and deliver us from the exploitation of the poor, or the least of these, and from favoritism toward the rich, the elite of these. We thank you for the empowering of thy servant, our 44th president, to inspire our nation to believe that, yes, we can work together to achieve a more perfect union. And while we have sown the seeds of greed, the wind of greed and corruption, and even as we reap the whirlwind of social and economic disruption, we seek forgiveness, and we come in the spirit of unity and solidarity to commit our support to our president by our willingness to make sacrifices, to respect your creation, to turn to each other and not on each other. And now, Lord, in the complex arena of human relations, help us to make choices on the side of love, not hate, on the side of inclusion, not exclusion, tolerance, not intolerance. And as we leave this mountaintop, help us to hold on to the spirit of fellowship and the oneness of our family. Let us take that power back to our homes, our workplaces, our churches, our temples, our mosques, wherever we seek your will. Bless President Barack, First Lady Michelle. Look over our little angelic Sasha and Malia. We go now to walk together, children, pledging that we won't get weary in the difficult days ahead. We know you will not leave us alone with your hands of power and your heart of love. Help us then now, Lord, to work for that day when nation shall not lift up sword against nation, when tanks will be beaten into tractors, when every man and every woman shall sit under his or her own vine and fig tree, and none shall be afraid, when justice will roll down like waters and righteousness as a mighty stream. Lord, in the memory of all the saints who from their labors rest, and in the joy of a new beginning, we ask you to help us work for that day when black will not be asked to get back, when brown can stick around, when yellow will be mellow, when the red man can get ahead, man, and when white will embrace what is right. Let all those who do justice and love mercy say amen. Amen. Say amen and amen.
The inspiring benediction there by the Reverend Joseph Lowry, one of the great figures of the civil rights movement. As we approach the end of this inauguration ceremony, there'll be the national anthem, and then President Obama and the First Lady will depart the stage.
And as the Reverend ended there on a rather humorous but so poignant note, a time when brown can stick around and when white does right. Now, this is what's so important here. There are two themes, I think, that run through the poetry and the speeches of this occasion. One is that the promise of liberty has finally been fulfilled, the promise made by the Founding Fathers with a black man being elected president and the remaking of this country.
And the rocket's red glare
The new president, the new vice president. Acknowledge each other. The final thanks. America has a new leader. And Matt, it's the time where we'll start to look in some detail at the message that the new president delivered.
Indeed, Hugh. And let me just say that never have so many people sung this particular song that we just heard in this city, or indeed watched it in their living rooms in America and around the world. To get back to the themes that you just alluded to, it's not just the fulfillment of the American dream, of the very idea on which this nation was founded, the idea of liberty, but it's also, as he said in his speech, the remaking of America. And at one stage, he very poignantly said, "We will once again become the leaders of the world." That was a Stinger missile aimed directly at the man that he replaces. He also said America has to pick itself up again, dust itself off, and remake this country. And then he added, so often we got the balance between liberty and security wrong, and that is the balance, the key point upon which America has tried to govern since 9/11. Many would argue that George Bush got that balance wrong. This is a man who's come to office vowing to get that balance right.
Robert Dallek, the presidential historian, Charles Ogletree, the academic and the man who taught the Obamas, still with me. Robert, what did you make of the speech, and put it in some kind of historical context for us?
Sure. Well, what I was struck by is how reminiscent it was of John F. Kennedy's address. And when Kennedy said the passing of the torch to a new generation, this is similar. This is a new generation now that takes power. It's not just an African American, but remember how young a man he is. Kennedy, of course, was only 43, and Obama is 47 years of age. The challenges are perhaps even greater today than they were when John Kennedy came to office in 1961. But the themes were very similar, I felt, to the Kennedy speech. Challenges, willingness to come together, to stand before the world as a united nation, prepared to meet the travails that will confront us in the coming days. It was inspiring in that sense, and very much, I feel, reminiscent of JFK.
Charles, how did you read it?
Well, it was a fabulous speech, and I think what's great about it, it spoke to the people of Kansas and the people of Kenya. It was very personal and very universal. It was Barack acknowledging the serious problems we face as a community, and at the same time that his willingness to reach out to every nation around the world to do great things. I have a 7 and 4 and 1-year-old granddaughter in Tallahassee watching this, and for them as young black girls, they don't see race, gender, age, class, religion. They see themselves as people who are part of a world where they can do anything. So it's a really warm moment for them.
You know, Charles, what that reminds me of is my 5-year-old granddaughter who said, "We are an Obama family."
Yes,
and
right.
So, you know, here we are. We crossed that divide.
Absolutely. And there are thousands of students here, former students,
Yes.
who are Barack Obama's classmates, supporters.
Yes.
And I see in my class, Criminal Justice Institute, students right now who have the same courage, the same intelligence, the same possibility, and they will do great things. It's a great time to be here.
Yes.
It's a great time to be here. We can all agree on that. Gentlemen, stay with us for a second, because our man Adam Brooks is at the US Capitol, just a few hundred yards away from us, but right in the thick of it. Adam?
Hugh, what an absolutely extraordinary moment that was when Barack Obama walked up there before his speech. When he walked to the podium, you could feel this enormous wave of feeling coming down the mall and kind of breaking over the crowd here. And you know, with the cheers and the shouts and the screams and the whoops. And to be honest, Hugh, it was joy. It was sheer, unrestrained joy. But then when Barack Obama actually got to the microphone, he launched into what struck me as a speech that was extremely blunt. And within a minute of his starting talking, he was reminding Americans that they are in the midst of crisis, that that crisis was due to greed and irresponsibility, a failure to take responsibility and to make hard choices. He spoke of a sapping of confidence and worries over national decline. You know, this was grim stuff. And the speech seemed to me, I'd be interested to see if your other guests agree, but it seemed to me to be without the kind of musicality that we somehow expect from Barack Obama. The tone of it was grim resolve. He said Americans are going to pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and begin the work of rebuilding America. It was a sort of grim strength and resolve.
Adam, thank you very much. We'll be back with you a little later. Adam Brooks there at the Capitol, the US Marine Band still playing. And among them, of course, Senator John McCain, who was defeated by Barack Obama at that election last year. Let's take some of the reaction in the crowd down on the National Mall, because that's where we'll get some of the response from every state of the Union. Clive Myrie is there. Clive, how did they receive it there?
The speech was received very, very well indeed by people on the ground here. I have to tell you that there are a few moist eyes around, people hugging each other as well when Barack Obama finished his inaugural speech. There are people here from all over the world and from all over the United States, and I'm joined by one couple who've come from the beautiful state of Georgia in the south. Just give me your name, sir.
My name is Melvin.
And your name?
My name is Linda.
Very pleased to meet you.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us. Tell me, why did you make this journey? Why was it so important for you to be here?
As an African American, as a black man, it was awesomely important for us to be here. This is history being made. We have come a long way, and we've studied and seen how things weren't always this way. And it proved to me that America has fiber, that our laws has principles, and it has come to the point now where we have a black president. And to do so, and if you look around, not just black people are here. People of all ethnicity is here. They're here, and I think he brings them hope. But more than that, for the black folk, he brings us hope even above and beyond, because we've seen some darker days. But the speech that he made today, it brought us some light. It made us believe that there are some brighter days ahead. But today is, and this week, and this process has been an awesome process, because America proves again that it's a great country. And everybody's excited about this.
Everybody's excited indeed. A few of the crowd are beginning to drift off now, but there's still hundreds of thousands of people here. With that, back to you, Hugh.
Clive, we'll be back with you a little later. We were mentioning, of course, before the ceremony started, that there were people here from all over the world, including some people from Kenya, which, of course, where Barack Obama's father was born, and lots of the family still there. Some members who've come over to the States today. But Karen Allen is in the village in Kenya where the family was based. And Karen, tell us what's been going on there.
Well, it's been extraordinary. This is a place, as you can see behind me, with barely any electricity, but the sense of energy here has been really quite astonishing. Just in the past few minutes, we've seen some generators being brought in that help to power a few screens, big television screens behind us, that allowed some of the thousands of people who thronged here to be able to watch Barack Obama's inaugural speech. For the past 24 hours, there's been an extraordinary sense of celebration, of festivity. There's a sign over on my right. You can't see it because it's so dark, but it basically says, Barack Obama, congratulations, our son. And that's how people here view Barack Obama. Although he is an American president where his priorities have to be the United States first, Kenyans here, and particularly here in Western Kenya, in Kogelo, see him very much as an African son. They're pinning all their hopes on him, not only to try and bring more development to this part of the world, but also to try and instill some kind of democratic values, if you like, in some of Africa's more dictatorial leaders. There is a sense here that what people are seeing is very much a dream. I keep hearing the words dream. It feels like we're living a dream when you talk to people here. But I think there is a real sense, as one lady told me, that the sort of change that Barack Obama has already brought and intends to bring about in America is the sort of change they hope that Kenya will be able to follow too.
Karen, thank you very much. Karen Allen there in Kenya, where, of course, the Obama family it came from, and lots of the family members have indeed come across to the United States today. We're going to join John Sopel on the National Mall. In a few moments, by the way, we'll see the departure of President Bush from the Capitol building. We'll be there when that happens. But, John, what's going on at the National Mall right now?
Well, Hugh, they queued for hours and hours to get in here to witness it, but they're filing out far quicker than they arrived. Just amazing how quickly this scene has been deserted, leaving the sort of debris and detritus. But you can still see hundreds of thousands of people who are here, who have been here listening attentively to what Barack Obama had to say. Huge points of applause at various points in the speech where he said, "We are prepared to lead again in the world." I think that got a lot of applause. I was also really struck, Hugh, compared to when we saw Barack Obama in the primaries a year ago to today. The tone has changed so much, largely because of the banking and economic crisis. But instead of it being the very upbeat, optimistic, you know, anything is possible, you felt he was a kind of preparing Americans for the fight ahead, and a very serious tone of voice being adopted.
John, thank you very much. John Sokol there on the National Mall. The scene on the east front of the US Capitol. The traditional departure of the outgoing president, George W. Bush, and the former First Lady, Laura Bush, and the Vice President, Joe Biden, and Dr. Jill Biden saying farewell. And our first glimpse properly of the former Vice President Dick Cheney, who, as Matt was explaining, is in a wheelchair today because he was rather enthusiastically trying to pack his boxes yesterday, apparently, and strained his back. But that's the reason that Dick Cheney is in the wheelchair today. Normally pretty robust kind of guy, though he's had some health problems in the past, but nothing to do with the reason he's in the wheelchair today, which is to do with over-enthusiasm, or so his sources and aides were telling us. So let's stay on these pictures, because very shortly we'll see the formal departure of George W. Bush. And Robert Dalek, you've studied the presidency over many, many years. As we look at these images here, this is the moment for lots of people when it signals formally that the old power has gone, the new power is in. It's a very powerful symbol that we're looking at.
It is an extraordinary moment, this transfer of power. What it puts me in mind of is what Harry Truman said the night before he left office. He was at a dinner party that Dean Acheson threw for him, and he said, "Here I am, I stand as President of the United States. I'm everything. Tomorrow, I'm nothing." Sort of this moment when he loses all authority. I think he was frustrated by it. I'm sure all presidents are.
Well, let's stay with the pictures, and let me bring in my guest, Christopher Hitchens, the journalist and author and commentator. Chris, good to have you with us.
Nice to be back.
Let's talk about these images as we look at them. What do they signify?
Well, they signify the instant, the moment, the frisson, as I think implying it is, of transition. For me, the moment actually was when I noticed the clock just hit midday. I thought he's now president whether he wants to be or not,
That's right.
and whether he's taken the oath or not. And I suppose also, for that moment, Joseph Biden was Mr. Bush's vice president.
That's right.
How odd.
There's a strange hiatus
And could have
there.
become president in a heartbeat. But there you go.
That's right.
Americans, I think, are justly entitled to go on about how they've been doing this so many times. An unbroken record.
Well, there's no handover like this, and look at the smiles and look at the warmth. There's no handover like this really anywhere in any major country in the world.
And it's hard to overdo. The other thing that's been striking me, though, in the days running up to this, is simply this: how presidential Biden, how presidential Mr. Obama already looked. Almost actually from the moment of the election. It seemed to everyone as natural as breathing that he was there. And I think that's an extraordinary thing. Remember, only a few months ago, people were talking about the Bradley effect. And if it wasn't the Bradley effect, the voting machines would have something wrong with them. And if it wasn't that, some of one's friends were saying someone would take a shot at them. None of this happened. I think everyone's entitled again to a bit of a pat on the back there.
A wave there from President Bush, as he's still called, by the way. He's still entitled to that title. But we will see the former president again in a short while, because he'll have the formal departure ceremony at Andrews Air Force Base, which is just outside Washington. So that's not the last glimpse of George W. Bush today. Meanwhile, the President Obama and the First Lady go back into the Capitol. There is a moment where the President will take to his room in the Capitol building, in the Congress there, where he'll sign a few papers. And then that'll be followed by the inaugural lunch in the Statuary Hall. We'll talk about that in a second. But while we look at these images, let me bring Catty Kay in, who's in Lafayette Square, next to the White House. Catty, what does it look like there?
Now the crowds are starting to fill out on the stands here, because of course they're all waiting for the president and the parade to come this way as well. I think there's a lot of wind picking up here. It's getting very cold up here by the White House. So they'll be all heading up here after their lunch. They have that lunch, and then 10,000 people take part in that parade. Takes the president and his wife, now the president and his wife. So about half an hour to take the parade route up here to the White House.
But let me just bring you the image that signals that great change has come to Washington and indeed to the world. The pattern of world leadership has changed today, and that is something that every country will be focusing on very closely. Helicopter about to leave, on its way to Andrews Air Force Base. And then, as I say, this inaugural lunch will take place where we may get a glimpse of that. That's a traditional part of the day itself. After which the grand parade will take place from the Capitol all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House, to Lafayette Square. President Bush on his way. President Obama, Vice President Biden wave goodbye. The 6 o'clock news with Matt Fry will follow in just a few moments, when he'll be reflecting on today's momentous events here in Washington. The election of America's first African-American president, President Barack Obama, comes to power on a huge tide of public support and goodwill. We've seen that today, but now starts the real test as he grapples with an enormous economic crisis and a country in need of renewal. He talked about renewal in that speech. Coverage continues on the BBC News channel throughout the evening, including the inaugural parade, as President Obama will make his way from the Capitol to the White House. It's already been a day that few of us will ever forget. Bye for now.
Treaties of the sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. And when my father died, and the pilgrims cried from every mountainside, let freedom reign.
The President-elect of the United States, Barack H. Obama.
I, Barack Hussein Obama,
Will, to the best of my ability,
and will to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Congratulations, Mr. President. All the best wishes.
Today, I say to you that the challenges we face are real. They are serious and they are many. They will not be met easily or in a short span of time. But know this, America, they will be met.
This is BBC One, now at 6 o'clock. The BBC News with George Alagar in London and Matt Fry in Washington.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
A defining moment as Barack Obama, an African American, becomes the 44th President of the United States. President Obama pledges to unite America, reach out to the world, and strive for a stronger future.
Let it be said by our children's children that when we were tested, we refused to let this journey end, that we did not turn back, nor did we falter. And with eyes fixed on the horizon and God's grace upon us, we carried forth that great gift of freedom and delivered it safely to future generations. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
Millions descend on Washington, and the world watches for the biggest and most anticipated inauguration in history.
Obama means freedom, Obama means change, Obama means something that my grandparents didn't live to see.
I'm so excited for the change that's coming to this country. I'm just so excited. It's an incredible moment for the country, for the world, for everyone involved.
Also on tonight's programme, the plunging numbers that point to recession, inflation down, a new low for the oil price, the pound is weaker, and billions more off bank shares. I wish I could have stopped this. The UN chief's thoughts as he surveys the wreckage of Gaza.
On BBC London, people here watch history being made over there. We assess how the Obama effect could change Londoners' lives and how thousands of homes in the capital could soon be powered by vegetable oil.
Good evening from an icy Washington where history has been made. For the first time, an African American has been sworn in as President and Commander-in-Chief of the United States. Almost exactly an hour ago, Barack Hussein Obama took the oath of office on the steps of the Capitol building behind me. Just 2 years ago, he was a little-known senator from the state of Illinois. An estimated 2 million people are here to witness this defining moment at a time of great expectations and deep crisis in America and around the world. Tonight we'll bring you the key moments, the reaction from here and beyond, and the thoughts of civil rights veterans who campaigned for decades to make this day possible. But first, our special correspondent Gavin Hewitt reports on the historic inauguration of Barack Obama.
A whole city is stirring in sub-zero night just to be there. By 6 a.m., long queues had formed to get the best vantage points. Masses huddled in blankets to witness history and the day America changed.
It's cold. I better see Obama's face. It's history, and long after I'm gone, my grandbaby will have this experience to say that she was here and witness it.
It means hopefully change, a change for the future for my children and my grandchildren.
Several 100,000 people were up early, queuing to be searched before lining the parade route. In places, the checkpoints were almost overwhelmed by the numbers. Some danced against the cold, but the mood was buoyant, with many believing today marked the renewal of America.
Massively significant. I think it's just a sea change, having an administration that's actually going to be listening to all the people and not just a certain segment.
Obama! Obama! Obama!
You hear it time and time again with this crowd, that so few of them believed there would be the day when there would be an African American as president. And all of them, despite the cold, want to be here to witness this day in American history.
The temperature might have been -6 degrees, but the crowds poured into the National Mall. This was 8:57, 3 hours before the swearing in. And this, 9:10, spaces much harder to find. Then the first glimpse of Barack Obama, a smile on his face, witnessing a day that must still seem incredible to him. He and his wife Michelle were driven a short distance to St. John's Church, where almost every president has worshipped. From today, this stylish couple will be the new face of America. Then the Obamas went to the White House, a sensitive moment in the transfer of power. Michelle Obama had a present for Laura Bush, a journal for her memoirs. Political opponents the two men might be, but the transition has been smooth, with President Bush saying his successor opens a fabulous new chapter for the United States. Then the journey to Capitol Hill for the swearing-in. By tradition, the president and his successor share the ride. President Bush and Barack Obama were in the back of a new armored vehicle called the Beast. Even as they moved, messages were pouring in from world leaders, excited but cautious about the transfer of power.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, Barack H. Obama.
Then Barack Obama emerged onto the steps of the Capitol building to a rapturous reception from a crowd estimated at well over 1 million people. Aretha Franklin had been asked to sing My Country 'Tis of Thee.
My country 'tis of thee.
And then the crowd rose for the swearing-in. Barack Obama placed his left hand on the velvet-bound Bible used by President Lincoln. And there were moments of nervousness.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will execute the office of President to the United States faithfully.
That I will execute
the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States faithfully.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
And so, with just over 40 words, power passed. The most powerful man in the world was black, the weight of history overcome. Hail to the chief played for the son of a Kenyan father and a mother from Kansas, testimony to the American dream. Almost immediately, President Obama acknowledged these were troubled times for America.
Less measurable, but no less profound, is a sapping of confidence across our land. A nagging fear that America's decline is inevitable, that the next generation must lower its sights. Today, I say to you that the challenges we face are real. They are serious and they are many. They will not be met easily or in a short span of time. But know this, America, they will be met.
But America is a country at war, and the new president addressed friends and foe alike.
We will begin to responsibly leave Iraq to its people and forge a hard-earned peace in Afghanistan. With old friends and former foes, we will work tirelessly to lessen the nuclear threat and roll back the specter of a warming planet. We will not apologize for our way of life, nor will we waver in its defense. And for those who seek to advance their aims by inducing terror and slaughtering innocents, we say to you now that our spirit is stronger and cannot be broken. You cannot outlast us, and we will defeat you.
And then he ended with a vision for his presidency.
Let it be said by our children's children that when we were tested, we refused to let this journey end, that we did not turn back nor did we falter. And with eyes fixed on the horizon and God's grace upon us, we carried forth that great gift of freedom and delivered it safely to future generations. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
President Obama today offered hope but sacrifice. He now has the awesome responsibility of power. Tomorrow, he knows the world, with all its uncertainty, intrudes. Gavin Hewitt, BBC News, Washington.
Well, as Gavin said, millions have crammed into Washington, D.C., a city of just over 600,000, to be part of this historic moment. Our correspondent Clive Mowry is in and amongst the crowds. Clive, I hope it's warmer where you are.
I'm afraid it isn't, Matt. Frankly, I can tell you that I haven't seen anything like it here, and the city of Washington has never seen anything like it here. America's never seen anything like this. Something like 1 million to 2 million people crammed into this small area for what was an amazing occasion. A lot of tears were shed today when Barack Obama gave his speech. A lot of hugs, a lot of crying, and a lot of relief.
That this is a generational shift, that this is the first post-baby boomer president
And with him comes a whole set of expectations from young Americans.
Of the United States, Joseph R. Biden Jr. and Dr. Biden, escorted by Senator and Mrs. Bennett.
Vice President Biden and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, taking their places inside the Statuary Hall at the U.S. Capitol for this inaugural lunch of 2009.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Barack H. Obama, and Mrs. Obama, escorted by Senator Feinstein and Mr. Blow.
Well, President Obama will get used to the strains of Hail to the Chief as he's applauded into the Statuary Hall for this inaugural lunch. To sustained applause from those invited, some 200 people, senior members of Congress, Senator John McCain, the man he defeated last November, and Mrs. McCain. Mr. Obama paid tribute to Senator McCain's lifetime of public service, and the man there on the right is Rahm Emanuel, who will be Chief of Staff in Mr. Obama's White House, and then, of course, the former Vice President Al Gore. Some of the other senior White House figures and advisors will be on their way to the White House just as soon as this lunch is completed. The offices have been made ready, the papers have been transferred, and the Obama team ready to move in. Congratulations go on for the 44th president. And very shortly, the Senator Dianne Feinstein, who managed the ceremony on the west front of the Capitol, will once again introduce the events here at this lunch. Lunch in the current form, by the way, has been a relatively recent thing because it started in about 1953. There were receptions, and some lunches took place at the White House itself on Inauguration Day, but it's this particular form and the way it's organised now by the Joint Committee on Inauguration is a relatively recent thing. And more of the very senior figures who will be advising Barack Obama in the White House. Some of them who've been working with him for 20 years or more. I'm not sure how long the applause has gone on, but it's pretty impressive. And it's sustained. It hasn't flagged at all. I'm going to bring in, as the new president says hello to Senator Ted Kennedy there, who's suffered a lot of ill health in the last few months. Very warm greeting to him. I'm just going to bring in very quickly Charles Ogletree for your thoughts on that incredible reception.
Well, one of the great things, as you saw here, we saw Adrian Fenty, the African-American mayor of Washington, D.C., but I also saw Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Stephen Breyer, and Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They don't normally come to these events. They have a reception right now at the White House. So it's nice to see that bridge, Rick. And one of the women you saw in the white dress was Valerie Jarrett, one of his closest friends. She was a young woman I mentored at Stanford when I was an undergraduate, and closest friend of Barack and Michelle. So the family family. This is all of America coming together. It's a wonderful occasion.
To be hosted in Statuary Hall, which served as the House chamber when Abraham Lincoln was a member of Congress. As president, he participated in the public inauguration ceremonies at the Capitol, even during the darkest days of the Civil War. As we approach the bicentennial of his birth, we honor his determination that those who have sacrificed for our country shall not have died in vain, and that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom. President Lincoln is also the inspiration for the painting we have chosen today. And this is the view of Yosemite Valley, of course, which happens to be in California, by Thomas Hill, strange, a 19th century painter that I very much love. It's on loan from the New York Historical Society, so it kind of binds New York and California. As the country struggled to emerge from the turmoil of the Civil War, many Americans looked west for the dawn of a new era. In tune with his times, President Lincoln signed the Yosemite land grant in order to protect the majestic wild beauty of the area. Thomas Hill painted the grandeur and the beauty of the American West that captured America's essence, our land of opportunity, optimism, and freedom. It is now my privilege to ask Dr. Barry Black, the chaplain distinguished of the United States Senate, to deliver the invocation, after which lunch will be served. Dr. Black. Thank you.
Let us pray. Lord of all nations, whose kingdom is above all earthly kingdoms, and who judges all lesser sovereignties, look with favor upon President Barack Obama, Vice President Joseph Biden, and members of the cabinet. Empower them with the wisdom, courage, and strength needed for our times, and protect them from any moral arrogance that obstructs the making of a world of justice, peace, and righteousness. Infuse them with a passion to act in ways pleasing to you. Lord, preserve their families in health and strength by your mercy and power, and may they find your grace sufficient for every need. We ask also that you would shower your blessings upon the American people. Give us the wisdom to support our new president with our prayers, patience, and perseverance. Bless now this luncheon and the nourishment we receive from your bounty. We pray in your sovereign name. Amen.
And with that prayer, and we heard there, asking Almighty God to protect the new president and the vice president from moral arrogance, the luncheon begins, the inaugural luncheon. And after this, we'll be in a position to tell you a little more about the timings for the next hour or so.
Dressed down in the White House. It's going to be dressed down Friday, every day in the White House.
And
We're going to wear
this lunch business.
None of this lunch business. It's going to be sandwiches and cold chicken. And when he moved into the White House, he famously told me this story last year. He said, you know what? We decided that we would invite all the people who helped us on the campaign, who put us up in their houses and on their farms, would invite them to stay in the White House. Now, there was a president in history, Andrew Jackson, who famously invited lots of people into the White House, and guess what happened? They tore the place down. They trashed the place. They got too drunk. They started to, to do things you're not supposed to do in that place, and so they put out a vat of whiskey to detract them. There we go. This is another one of those many ceremonial moments that we're watching at the moment. This is still taking place after the lunch on Capitol Hill behind us in Statuary Hall. This is the place between the Senate and the House of Representatives where congressmen and senators famously give their versions of the President's State of the Union address in a kind of giant marble spin room. Now they've got something else to look at, which are two cut glass bowls. I'm not exactly certain what that is for, but I think it's some sort of ceremonial gift
and now, if
from
I may,
both houses
I would like
of Congress,
to ask
I'm guessing
my
here,
friend,
handed to the new
Senate
president.
Majority Leader Harry Reid, to
We also
come
just
to
saw the
podium
president kissing Nancy
and
Pelosi. She's, of course, the
bring your
Speaker of the
glass,
House of
please,
Representatives.
as
She will
we
have to
offer a
corral,
toast
to
our new
ride herd, as
president and our
George
new
Bush
vice
used to say, her troops on Capitol Hill in the House of Representatives to make sure that that Democrat majority actually works for President Obama when he tries to pass some of that funding legislation that he's promised us. There we have Harry Reid. He's the Democrat Speaker of the House, a Mormon, a senator from the state of Nevada. Not one of the most charismatic chaps on the Hill, but quite effective as a schmoozer of frayed Capitol Hill nerves and a fixer of deals.
And John Kennedy. Barack Obama, when he served in the Senate, served on the prestigious Foreign Relations Committee. Where else would he go to find the best teammate he could find than the person that ran that committee, Joe Biden? Joe Biden has set an example for me, everyone that's ever served with him in the Senate, as a person who is a teammate, first of all, a counselor, an advocate, a friend, an exemplar. So it's my toast that this will continue, Mr. Vice President, that you continue being what you have been to our new president. Barack Obama, Joe Biden, the dream team. Godspeed.
And now I would like to propose a toast to the new President of the United States. Mr. President, Mrs. Obama, so much rests on your shoulders. Our hopes, our dreams, the future of this country. We have watched you. We see the equanimity. We see the dedication. We see the balance. And I think the sense of all of us in this room is that this nation is in good hands. May those hands remain stable and steady. May those hands always be well. May you and your family be blessed with the love of the American people. And may we in government be your partner in the future of this great country. We salute you, Mr. President.
Senator Dianne Feinstein there, who's been leading lots of the ceremonial aspects of today, Matt, and drinking to the health and to the success of the new president.
Please, indeed, as you would expect, he's going to respond to her toast right now. We're watching him speak yet again today, and this will be interesting because he will have to cement that relationship.
I know that while I was out of the room, concern was expressed about Teddy. He was there when the Voting Rights Act passed. Along with John Lewis, was a warrior for justice. And so I would be lying to you if I did not say that right now a part of me is with him. And I think that's true for all of us. This is a joyous time, but it's also a sobering time. And my prayers are with him and his family and Vicky. I want to thank Dianne, Bob, and the entire committee for hosting just an extraordinary inauguration. When you think about the complexities of putting together an event of this size and this scope, you have to marvel at the leadership and the teamwork and the good spirits that went into it. And I want to thank
our military and our law enforcement officers, the City of Washington and Mayor Fenty, the devoted staff and volunteers, including our wait staff here today, who were putting up with me wandering through the tables. It's always hazardous duty serving in a room full of politicians. But I thank all of you for just an incredible, incredible event. This has been a historic inauguration that's been noted before. You see it not so much in this room, although this is a gathering of some of my best friends and my family and people with extraordinary records of leadership in this country, including our past presidents, President Carter and Clinton, as well as Vice President Quayle. Did I miss anybody? And Vice President Gore, right in front of me. And Vice President Mondale. See, this is what happens when you start. But I think the depth of the moment is expressed by the people beyond these halls. Millions of people who over the last 3-4 days and tens of millions more over the last 2 years have participated in the very essence of our democracy. It's not just their size, but it's their intensity and their engagement. What's happening today is not about me. It is about the American people. They understand that we have arrived at a moment of great challenge for our nation, a time of peril, but also extraordinary promise. And by being here today and by participating in innumerable ways across cities and small towns and suburbs all across the country, they are demonstrating their readiness to answer history's call and to step up and give back and take responsibility for serving the common purpose of remaking our nation. The American people have come together across races and regions and stations. Now we have to do the same. Now it falls to us, the people's representatives, to give our fullest measure of devotion to the cause of freedom and liberty and justice, decency and dignity in our chambers should reflect what we know are in the hearts of the American people. And so I'd like to, all of us, to rededicate ourselves to fulfilling the sacred charge the American people have given to us. I'd like all of us to come together with a sense of purpose and civility and urgency. It doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything, and I assure you our administration will make mistakes. But what the American people, I think, do expect from us now is a sense not of simply our trying to advance our own aims, but trying to advance theirs. And I'm confident we can do so. Thank you all for this great honor, and I look forward to working with you in the years to come.
President Obama applauded by senior members of Congress at the end of this inaugural lunch, but a rather worrying shadow cast over this lunch, Matt, by the news that Senator Ted Kennedy collapsed at the start of the lunch.
Well, indeed. I mean, we've got to remind the audience that Ted Kennedy was, of course, diagnosed with a serious brain tumor last year, spent a lot of time in hospital, underwent chemotherapy, lost his hair, was really counted out of the political process, and then re-emerged, Phoenix-like, at the Democratic Convention in Denver, where he gave one of the most effective speeches, almost from the bowels of history. There's a picture of him earlier today, and we saw him
looking very well.
Exactly. But maybe the excitement of the day, who knows what's gone on, who knows what state he's in right now. But it's also important to point out to you that it was his endorsement, the endorsement of what's left of the Kennedy dynasty, of Barack Obama's candidacy, over the heads of the Clinton family.
Absolutely.
There was a crucial moment in that man's journey from Chicago, Illinois, to the White House.
Why did he back Obama, do you think?
I think he backed Obama because he never got on terribly well with the Clintons in the first place. Secondly, he felt perhaps in the spirit of his own brother who was assassinated, that it was time to pass the torch, not to a family called Clinton, not to a family called Bush certainly, but to a completely new family with a rather unlikely name. And that Barack Obama, as a representative of that new tribe of politicians who were trying to make themselves heard on the American political landscape, represented something that we hadn't seen for some time. Youth, freshness, vigor, and just the incredible, compelling nature of being different. That is what Barack Obama was to the Kennedys. That is what he was to much of this country. And I think the problem that Hillary Clinton made at the beginning of the campaign is that, and the problem that actually a lot of journalists made too, is that they kind of assumed that she would be the anointed heir. She assumed that she would be the anointed heir. And I think America, especially after the last 8 years, was sick and tired of the so-called arrogance of incumbents, that you are somehow entitled to this job at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And along comes a chap very much from the margins of politics who just took the country by storm, and did so not only through the power of his words, but also through the almost military nature of the organization of his campaign, the way he used the internet, the way he used fundraising on the internet, the way he scattered his various teams around the country, again taking his campaign into boldly into Republican territory where no Democrat had dared step before. Can he do the same as president now? Indications so far are that he will not commit the mistake that many American presidents commit after the exhausting journey to the White House, the election itself. He will not underreach, he may overreach, but overreaching is something that much of this country is looking for at this moment of crisis.
Interesting when you talk about Ted Kennedy deciding that the future is not with the Clintons, it's with Obama. And of course, there were several key figures who were friends of the Clintons. I'm thinking about the White House counsel, Greg Craig, and there are others too who decided basically to risk the rupture with the Clintons in order to back the Obamas.
I have a friend who worked for the Clinton administration and decided that he would switch to Obama. And that was a real wrench to suddenly desert the team that you'd worked for. Yeah. And Bill Clinton was, in the eyes of many Americans and many, many Democrats, a great president. Hillary Clinton, they believe, would have made a great president. But despite her really rather fantastic candidacy, she was trumped on so many different levels by this new arrival, Barack Obama. And the Clintons, I have to say, they may have been licking their wounds, but they've been extremely gracious in recent weeks to the man who's now going to run this country.
The lunch just drawing to a close with the final prayers here, Matt.
With equal justice for all.
Indeed, and of course for them it's going to be a long day. I mean, I remember Hillary Clinton talking about her, said that when she finally got back into the White House after her first inauguration in 1992, her feet were so bloodied after wearing tight shoes at 14 inaugural balls, having walked part of the parade route, and having basically been on her feet for the better part of an entire day, that she was just so happy to get back into her new bed. I mean, they're not going to go to 14 inaugural balls. I think they're going to attend 10 of those tonight, the Obamas. But that will be something quite exhausting, to be followed by 5 or 6 hours in bed before he then sits in the Oval Office for the first time, checks out his new desk, and starts actually running this country. And again, they're saying prayers there on Capitol Hill, and I can't emphasize this enough. He needs to work with the new Congress to make the things that he envisions for this country happen. Now, the Congress is dominated by Democrats. He doesn't have a supermajority of 60 or more in the Senate, which would have helped him perhaps more. And he needs to bring Republicans, moderate Republicans, on side in order to especially get this stimulus package started, without which the economy here probably won't recover. I wonder how long it'll take for America and indeed the world to judge whether he's been a success or failure. I mean, talk about the first 100 days in office, yes, the honeymoon period, but I think we will probably know by the end of this year, considering the amount of money that he's going to spend, whether he's been a success or a failure.
So as this inaugural luncheon comes to a close, Matt, we're also hearing from one news agency that Senator Robert Byrd has also collapsed in the past hour or so. And if that is true, and if Senator Ted Kennedy as well is in a very worrying state of health, that does really cast a shadow over today's lunch.
It does. I have to say, I mean, it is deeply shocking. If we have to, of course, find out exactly what state of collapse they were in. Robert Byrd is extremely old. He's the veteran senator of veteran senators.
I think Matt Fry's with me still. Matt, we've waited for this for a good hour now, but the lunch is over, and I think we're about to see the president leave the US Capitol.
Indeed.
For the parade to start.
Let me just pick up very quickly on what John said as well. This man who walks out of the Capitol building there, Barack Obama, doesn't just have 4 years, he has perhaps 2 years to make his mark. Because in 2 years' time, what's he going to do again? He's going to run for office again. So comparisons with Tony Blair are perhaps even a bit generous in terms of the time frame. British Prime Minister can go on for 5 years. This man can only go on for 4 years. He has to start running for office again in 2 years' time. That is now the average length of an American presidential campaign. It involves fundraisers, endless speeches, traveling up and down this vast country. So he really has to make his mark right at the very beginning. That is the expectation. That is what I think the opposition, the Republicans, will allow him to do up to a point. But as we heard earlier from the New York Times, a business editor, economists on the right are in favor of spending an awful lot of money. Politicians on the right, not necessarily. We'll see how he manages to finesse that. But here we see one of the, or just saw briefly, one of the first of the many marching bands. I think that something like 1,400 applied to take part in this parade.
I can tell you, Matt, there are 13,500 people taking part in this parade.
Well, there we go.
Many of them are bands people.
Well, indeed. There will be there will be more brass on this brassy day than Washington has seen for a very long time. And of course they do this sort of thing extremely well. I mean, it's oddly enough, this is one of the things that America has inherited from Britain. In this elected monarchy, the pomp and circumstance, the attention to detail, the sheer joy of these parades and rituals, they do that extremely well in this country.
Well, this is the review, the formal review of the troops and the bands before the new president makes his way along to his new home, which is the White House, of course, as Matt says, for the next 4 years at any rate.
And remember, this is a guy, President Obama, who 8 years ago couldn't get accreditation to take part in the Democratic National Convention in Los Angeles when Al Gore was the candidate. He couldn't even pay for his hire car. He rented a car from Hertz and they said, no, we can't give you this car because you haven't paid your bills.
Yeah, your credit card bill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He finally managed to persuade them to give him a car after all. But he really was at the very margins of American politics, and now he's at the very center of it. Their President, Vice President Joe Biden again, Senator from Delaware. It'll be really fascinating to see how he performs his role as the Vice President. He's got a lot of experience on the foreign policy front. He follows a Vice President who is perhaps more, flexed his muscles more, got more involved in the process of government than any Vice President in history. Not always to everyone's liking, it has to be said. Joe Biden will probably not be Dick Cheney, but the parameters of what he can do have certainly been shifted. Although, of course, he'll be extremely careful not to try and upstage the boss.
Well, there was that very interesting little exchange on one of the big American talk shows yesterday, Matt, where Joe Biden's wife seemed to suggest that he'd been given a choice of whether to be Vice President or Secretary of State. I'm sure Hillary Clinton listened with some interest.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I haven't heard that confirmed by anyone yet.
Yeah.
It may or may not be true. That is water under the bridge, quite frankly. What Joe Biden most controversially said, and this is a man who was known as a senator for not always being able to control his tongue, and did so very effectively during the campaign. He was very disciplined. But what he said during the campaign was that Barack Obama will be tested in the first 6 months that he's in office by some international event. He didn't specify what he meant by that. But that was very controversial at the time because John McCain, his opponent, said, well, if he's going to be tested, I've already been tested throughout my political career. We don't want someone in the White House who's a novice on this front. So that's one of the sort of warnings from Joe Biden that we have to keep an eye on. They're a little nod to history in that parade. Of course, they're not the redcoats, but they certainly look like redcoats to me. America loves its history. It's one of those things, I think they celebrate history in a more conscious way, self-conscious way than we do, perhaps because they've had relatively little of it. But it's they go back to it a lot, they borrow from it, and the presidency is so much seen as a kind of continuing, evolving role that started with the Founding Fathers. And every inauguration is a renewal of the kind of original idea in rhetorical and ceremonial terms behind America. And every president feels, I think quite consciously, that he follows in the footsteps of the Founding Fathers of this country. George Washington, the first president of America, John Adams, the first vice president of America, Thomas Jefferson, the greats that founded this country have also tried to run this country. And Barack Obama, 47-year-old former senator from Illinois, follows in their footsteps. That must be quite some burden to feel on a day like this.
And of course, one of the reasons that throughout the campaign he has invoked the name of Abraham Lincoln time and time again and replicated the journey to Washington. And again, Matt, just going back to the address, I suppose there was the sentiment, the rebuilding, the renewal, which Lincoln talked about so grandly and so powerfully. But Barack Obama didn't really dig very deeply into the Lincoln rhetoric.
He didn't, and maybe he did that self-consciously because he didn't want to plagiarize a previous president. I don't know, it'll be really interesting to see which line from that speech will be teased out and distilled out by the commentariat over the next few days. I have to say, I'm still at some loss about which particular line will end up in marble at some stage in the future.
All the guests today that we've had, and we've had some very eminent guests, seem to agree that when you refer to his father and the great strides that have been made in this country over the past half century in terms of racial equality, that was what brought the crowd to its feet.
Indeed, and I think it's a very obvious point to make. It's a very obvious point to make for him. But I think, again, to be fair, his best speeches could never really easily be distilled into a single soundbite. I mean, I think the best speech that perhaps he's given in his entire political career, certainly the one that I heard, was not the one in Denver. It wasn't the one today. It was the one he gave actually in front of a very small audience of journalists, trying to explain why he had severed relations with his former pastor, Jeremiah Wright, who said some very inflammatory things about America. And in that speech, he really encapsulated, like no one else since Martin Luther King, the challenge of race in this nation. And it's not just a challenge for white America, it is also, as he pointed out, a challenge for black America. You cannot just hide behind the history of slavery in order to abrogate the responsibilities of today. You have to step up to the plate. And that was a very controversial speech in the African American community, but it hit the nail on the head. Ask me to remember a single line from that speech, I'm going to find that quite difficult. That doesn't make it a bad speech, though.
Not at all. Here we are. Lots of interest in the car, the great presidential limousine, USA 1. It's called the Beast, Matt. Tell us about it.
It's the Beast because it's very big and it's very heavy, and it can withstand all sorts of armor, rather things being hurled at its armor. And notice there are always two of these. They'll need two today because there's a large party, but often it is the decoy, it is, in fact, not often, always there's a decoy limo that travels with the president. When the president travels by helicopter, you will see 3 helicopters in the sky over the White House. 2 are decoys and 1 actually contains him. I mean, this man, any American president, travels with a small army behind him, and you know, even when he's just going to visit friends down the road. In fact, yesterday I was almost run over by his cavalcade as I was heading to one of the inaugural parties, and you saw the 2 presidential limos, the decoy and the real one, and then 15 vehicles behind, including an ambulance and what they call the war wagon, which is an SUV with its armored, with dark tinted windows, with a kind of hatch open at the back where sharpshooters poke their guns out of. I mean, it is quite an extraordinary undertaking.
So when President Obama visits London, as he surely will do in the next 6 months or so, will the Beast come with him?
The Beast will come with him, maybe not this particular Beast, there are other Beasts like it, but the Beast, there will be a Beast for him to travel in. He will not travel in Her Majesty's Rolls Royce. He will not travel in the Prime Minister's car. He will travel in his own car. He will come on his own plane. Air Force One is always accompanied by at least 3 or 4 other planes. The last one of which is the press charter where we get to travel. Then occasionally we get invited onto Air Force One, and one always hopes that the president goes to the back of the plane to give us a little briefing.
Of course.
It'll be very interesting to see how he handles the media. This has been an extremely tightly controlled campaign with virtually no leaks. It follows the Bush White House, which again was quite tightly controlled for most of the time. Although he is a very popular president who has reached out to the people of America with the internet, with the tools at his disposal, the message will be more tightly controlled, I would guess, than any previous White House.
Interesting. I mentioned a visit to Britain, Matt. What are the calculations there? There'll be immense pressure from the British Embassy and from Gordon Brown for Britain to get that first visit to Europe, certainly. What are the calculations there for the president?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, Barack Obama cherishes the special relationship between America and Britain like every other American president, but Barack Obama also knows that there's a lot of repair work to be done as far as America's image is concerned in other parts of Europe, in other parts of the world, like the Middle East. So who knows, perhaps he will surprise us by going somewhere else. But I bet you that the first trip, when it comes, will be some sort of global tour, the Obama tour, which will take into account a number of European and perhaps Middle Eastern nations. But remember, Hugh, fixing the world is not the priority here. It's fixing America's economy that is his priority. In a recent phone-in program to our sister station, ABC, about the kind of questions that the anchor Charlie Gibson should ask Barack Obama, 99% were about the economy. That's what people want to know. You cannot overemphasize to what extent the self-confidence of this nation was first pummeled by the low esteem of America around the world, and now far more crucially by its self-esteem as a nation founded not just on the values of liberty that we saw espoused again today, but also on the value of prosperity and the freedom to become rich. That American dream has become a nightmare for countless Americans, and is going to get worse in 2009.
So the parade is about to get underway, and we're delighted to be able to say that after, well, a couple of hours of waiting, really. But we've discussed lots of the main themes from that inaugural address, and we look ahead to what's going on in the next hour and a half or so as the parade starts. And Rajesh Michandani is on the parade route, and I'm suspecting, Rajesh, that you may be able to see things starting to move in the distance.
Well, right here, we're about halfway down the parade route, Hugh. It's called Freedom Plaza. And the parade, as you said, has started just way up Pennsylvania Avenue up there, right by the Capitol. It'll go all the way down to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, which is obviously the White House, the president's new address. And from there, he and his family will watch the proceedings. Now, the first sign that we'll get of the parade actually coming into view for us, well, the first thing we'll probably hear is the shouts and the screams of thousands of people lining the route, but we will see a huge phalanx of motorcycles. That'll be police motorcycles, followed by the police chief of the US Capitol, and then there are Secret Service motorcycles, and then there's the press pool, and then there are a dozen vehicles, included amongst which is the president's Cadillac, surrounded by Secret Service vehicles. And then that procession goes on even further. There's the vice president's cavalcade, and then more Secret Service vehicles, and then all the vehicles containing members of the various inauguration committees. And then after that is when you get the parade proper, starting with the US Army Band, and then divided into 6 sections relating to 5 of the branches of the military, and also the US Merchant Marine as well. And interspersed with all those military elements will be civilian elements. And there's some 13,000 people taking part in this parade. It's one of the largest ever staged. You're going to see, apart from the military elements, you're going to see drill teams, you'll see school choirs, you'll see floats, you'll see, dance crews. There's even a team from New Jersey of young guys who were inner city kids, deprived kids, who were on the verge of getting into trouble, that was saved through a program. And they've actually come with drum kits. They're percussionists, and they'll be playing in the parade as well. So we're waiting for that to appear down here. They'll all process down here. It'll take quite a while. The whole parade in itself will last about 2.5 hours and end up down by the White House. Now, presidential inaugural parades are something of a tradition. It goes all the way back to George Washington, in fact, in 1789. When he was inaugurated in the then capital, New York, he made his way to New York's Federal Hall, and he was followed by various militias who joined with him, maybe to protect him. That was then vastly different from the parade that we're expecting to come down any minute now, but it was in 1805 Thomas Jefferson began this tradition of inaugural parades. It was his second term in DC then. He came down Pennsylvania Avenue and he was followed by local workers and a military band. And since then, it's grown and it's grown and it's grown. This is definitely one of the most lavish. There was one parade many years ago which actually involved elephants. I don't think we're going to see any of them, not least because it's absolutely freezing. What we have got lots of, though, are spectators. I mean, the route is lined 20 deep in some places and thousands of people are here. Some of them have been here since before daybreak this morning, and that's what it's now, you know, that's nearly 10 hours, and it's been extraordinarily cold, and they're getting a little bit angsty. They want to see the presidential parade, but also they're very, very enthusiastic. The numbers reflect that, and the mood to keep themselves warm. They've been doing impromptu dance sequences, and they're hoping now, finally, more than an hour after it was scheduled to happen, the presidential parade will actually start to appear just in shot here on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Well, there we are. That was Rajesh Merchandani at Freedom Plaza, which is on Pennsylvania Avenue, right bang slap in the middle of the parade route. Hugh Edwards has gone inside to warm up for a minute. We've got shift work going on here on the roof of the BBC temporary studio outside Capitol Hill. You can still see the building there behind me. But of course, the proceedings have moved on. We have now got the beginning of that parade. And this is what so many people have been waiting for. It is really in the kind of ceremonial pageantry of this day. It is the moment when the president, the new president, meets and greets, comes into contact with the people who've elected him, who've been lining the parade route since the early hours of the day. Again, we talk about this car all the time, but it is quite extraordinary. Remember, in 1961, when it was even colder than it is now, hard to imagine, President Kennedy, then newly elected, rode to the White House from Capitol Hill in an open-top car. The roof was down. President Kennedy and his wife Jackie waved at the crowds, and that tradition ended after his assassination. The next inaugural parade, which featured President Lyndon Johnson, was conducted in a closed armored vehicle, precisely because of what happened so tragically to JFK. And ever since then, of course, the parades have been like this. The armored vehicle, the beast, has inched its way down Pennsylvania Avenue, and then at some stage, we don't know when, we don't know where, the new president is expected to get out of his comfort zone in the car and talk to the people who've lined the parade route and so eagerly awaiting this particular moment. But when he reaches the end of his parade route, he would have reached Catty Kay, who's outside the White House. Catty, I hope you're a little bit warmer than I am. We've talked endlessly about what to expect from all this. What so far, Catty, in this really quite important historic day, has been the moment that you will take away with you for the scrapbooks?
You know, Matt, I think it was the seriousness of his speech and this appeal to move beyond ideology, not to look at solutions that came from the left or the right, big government or small government, but to look to pragmatism. And if I had to sum up Barack Obama, I think, in one word, it would be pragmatic. That's what we've seen through his transition. That's what he is known to be from people that have known him for a very long time. I went up to Harvard just before Christmas and spoke to people that had taught him up there, and they described a man who was very good at sitting down with people from opposing points of view, synthesizing those points of view and coming up with something in the middle. That's how they described his particular form of intelligence. It was almost a kind of management style, if you like. Remember that he won his position as president, the first black president of the Harvard Law Review, by getting conservatives on board, with the support of conservatives on the Law Review board. So this is a man who can take different points of view, who can bring in people of different political persuasions and govern in a non-ideological way. I have also heard from people who knew him back when he was at Harvard and when he was at Chicago Law School as well, that he himself is actually pretty liberal. that he opposes the death penalty, that he is more in favor of gun control, but that he is also somebody who doesn't necessarily govern as he believes. So he himself might be quite liberal, but he wants to govern as a centrist. We saw it during his campaign, the way he reached out to people, and I think we heard it again in that inaugural address today, and I suspect that's why he didn't want to appeal so much to his African-American roots. He wanted to reach out to Americans with a seriousness of purpose, but to say this is a time now to get beyond the bitter ideologies that have really riven American politics for the last 30, 40 years and come up with something that is more consensual. And that is really his form of government. I think that's what we're going to see here in Washington. It's really going to be the change of tone that Americans asked for during the election, that he himself wants to try to bring into office.
But it's interesting, Cathy, isn't it? Because on one hand, we have Barack Obama, the rather businessman-like, pragmatic chief executive of America Inc. in all its problems at the moment, very much striking that note today in his speech. But the reason why we saw those Hollywood celebrities at that party that we went to last night, the reason why Dustin Hoffman is here and Sharon Stone and Beyonce and Bruce Springsteen, and my God, I could go on and on and on. And the reason, more importantly, why there are literally millions of people lining this parade route and the rest of Washington is because of his image as an orator, as a young, fresh politician, a breath of fresh air, icy air today in the political landscape of this country, which has got used to really two surnames in the last few decades. One is Bush and one is Clinton. And I think it's really fascinating that he manages to straddle both the world of pragmatic politics, of businessman-like kind of toiling at the coalface of power, while at the same time being an inspiration and the embodiment of a hope that these people haven't seen for some time here.
Well, there's a lot that's very interesting about Barack Obama and in terms of his character and his political character, and one of those, I think, is that people project onto him what they want. You saw it in the campaign. Young people saw him as the changing generation. Black Americans saw him as their hope for leadership. Liberals see him as their hope for a change in Washington after 8 years of Republican governance. Economists say that they see in him somebody who's very smart and will govern from the centre and take on economic values. And he is slightly enigmatic. It's something that is part, I think, of the fascination about him. If you try and pin down Barack Obama, what is he really? And it's quite hard to do so. You see it in some of his policies. For example, trade. Where does he stand on trade? Is he a protectionist or is he a free trader? He's somebody who I think a lot of people in this country and around the world, you see it in Africa, you see it in the Middle East, onto whom they can project their aspirations and their ideals for America. And that's why you've got so many people turning out today.
And that could be one of his weaknesses too. I mean, he himself wrote in his second best-selling book, The Audacity of Hope, which he wrote once he was already here in Washington, sometimes I'm seen as a blank page onto which people can project their different and opposing views. I guess the danger is that he becomes everything to all men. And I think what will be really interesting in the next few months is to see to what extent the process of power, the actual chore of making big decisions in important times, will tease out of Barack Obama what we know of him and who he is beyond the sometimes rather vague, if soaring rhetoric. And I think those judgment calls that you have to make, those decisions, and we've already seen a few indications that they can be pretty tough in the transition period, will really come down the pipe with a vengeance as soon as he sits in the Oval Office.
I think that risk of him being all things to all men would be greater if it weren't for another aspect of his political personality that's also very interesting, and that's his self-confidence. This is a man who is rock solid politically in terms of his intellect, in terms of how he's going to run his campaign so far, and I suspect in terms of how he's going to run his Oval Office. I was talking to a member of Congress last night and we were talking about Barack Obama's foreign policy, given that he has these big egos around him. He's got Hillary Clinton, who's very experienced, he's got Joe Biden, who's also very experienced, and I was asking, you know, so, Congressman, whose foreign policy is this going to be? Is it going to be Clinton's, Biden's, or Barack Obama's? And it was Congressman Clyburn from South Carolina said to me, there is absolutely no doubt this is Barack Obama's presidency. He is going to put his stamp on foreign policy and he's going to put his stamp on domestic policy, in a way perhaps that President Bush didn't do for the last 8 years, particularly when it came to domestic policy. So I think that he's a pretty confident guy. We saw it during his campaign. He didn't waver when he was under attack last August for running a poor campaign. He kept very steady, and I think that that will enable him to give his presidency shape, despite the strong characters that he has around him and despite other people's ability to project onto him their own hopes and aspirations.
Indeed, and Cathy, we've discussed this before, but if you look at the cabinet that he's appointed, it's full of old Clinton people who served under President Clinton. It almost looks like the kind of cabinet that Hillary might have appointed had she been elected, but for one crucial difference, Cathy.
Yeah, Barack Obama wouldn't have been in it. If that had been Hillary Clinton sitting in the bulletproof glass enclosed enclosure just over my shoulder, you can bet your bottom dollar, Matt, it wouldn't have been Barack Obama being Secretary of State. She is not that kind of consensual politician that he is. He's also, of course, brought in Republicans as well. And his ability to reach out to Republicans even before he's taken office has been noticed in this town. I was speaking to Rahm Emanuel, his chief of staff, over the weekend, who said to me, look, unprecedented, we have effectively passed a piece of legislation before Barack Obama took over the presidency that was getting through this second tranche of the big TARP spending program, and we did it by reaching out to Republicans. They didn't all support us in the Senate, they only got 6 of those votes, but we did it by a different tone, by respecting other people's points of view and by managing to persuade Republicans who had opposed this bill to come on board with us. So I think that's going to be a difference too, that he's not just going to reach out to Democrats and to old Clinton people, he's also pretty determined to try and reach across the aisle as well. And because of the nature of the time in which he takes office, because of this economic crisis, he has more ability to do this, I think, than he would have done otherwise.
Indeed, and as we watch these limousines, the armoured USA-1 car, the president, literally inch its way down Pennsylvania Avenue, you kind of have to wonder, have they imposed new restrictions on speeding during presidential inaugurations? Because this one is really, really slow. But I guess it's to give everyone a chance to see the man inside, his wife and the children, presumably waving at the crowd. And this is something that the crowd deserves, having waited so long in the cold. And remember, a century ago, this would have been done on a horseback, or then in a horse-drawn cart, or then an open car. Now we have these armored limousines that are slowly moving down Pennsylvania Avenue. And waiting to meet the car before it gets to Cathy is Rajesh Merchandani, who's standing in Freedom Plaza. Rajesh, the crowd there has been very patient. What do they hope for when they see that car roll by? Is it just a simple wave and a smile, or something a bit more perhaps?
I think what everyone here who's lining the route, and some people have been here nearly 10 hours, is hoping for is that he stops and gets out and does his first presidential walkabout. We don't know that it's going to happen. His security detail, I'll guarantee you, will tell him not to do it. But that's what people want. They want not just a glimpse of him, they'll be happy with a glimpse of him. And I think that's why they're going so slowly, so that as many people as possible can see the new president. And I'm just beginning to hear some of the cheers now. These are the first motorcycle outriders. These will be police motorcycles. I'm just going to move out of the way and let you have a proper look there. And they really are going extraordinarily slowly. There's a kind of MC coming over the tannoy system, the speaker system as well, telling everyone what's going on. And just as they started to appear, he said, is everyone feeling any warmer now? And the crowd started to cheer. It's been very, very cold, and some of these people have been here since before daybreak.
Did anyone else notice all Batmans and no Robin?
Of course, in the old days, Rajesh, you used to be able to drive down Pennsylvania Avenue right in front of the White House. And that was only normal traffic, that is, not just presidential limousines. And that was stopped after the Oklahoma bombing in the mid-90s. It was after that that the White House, and we're seeing those shots there in front of the White House, I think, stopped being a drive-through road. What you see, not today but on any other day, is that these sort of bollards, these cement pylons shoot out of the road to make sure that no one who's lost his way goes down that road. these are just one of the many security precautions that have been put in place, including what we're looking at right now, which is that rather hideous bulletproof glass encasement, the sort of presidential glass house for this particular ceremony, which will be his official entry into his new residence. Presumably heated, certainly bulletproof, not very attractive, but unfortunately one of those things that the times and the security paranoia calls for. Remember also that this is a man who was given a Secret Service detail, bodyguards, for want of a better word, at the beginning of his campaign. As soon as he announced that he was running for president, a few months later, he was given a Secret Service detail. The only other presidential candidate who had that was Hillary Clinton, and that's because she was a former First Lady. Here we have the crowds cheering, some of them running, I don't know why they're running, to keep up with the presidential limousine. Still the Capitol in the background there. And that always rather poignant, heavy-pocketed walk of the security officials, the Secret Service agents, armed to the teeth, one would have assumed, lining the presidential limousine. There we saw crowds on top of one of the office buildings on the parade route. Everyone with a view in Washington, outside or inside, has gone to witness this occasion. The first time that the new president goes for a drive-about amongst the crowd and hopefully a walkabout. And as soon as he gets to the White House, of course he'll have the inauguration balls tonight. He'll have some tea when he gets home to his new home. The whole White House would have been rearranged during the transition period on paper by staff, and there were something like 300 people working just on moving the Obama stuff from Chicago into the White House. Of course, they won't have been able to do that until now. And the reason being that the Bushes were still living there until this morning. It was their stuff that was in the White House. But now they're moving boxes frantically. Maybe that's why they're taking such a long time, to make sure that when the first family gets to the White House, they will find that furniture that they left behind in their private residence in Chicago. They won't have to do much pushing around of sofas and things like that. Catty, if we can talk to Catty again, it is extraordinary, is it not, how these transitions kind of drag on. I know this is short by comparison, because until the second inauguration of FDR, Roosevelt, President Roosevelt in 1937, I think it was, the inauguration took place in March, which was an even longer transition, and he decided to put an end to that because it was simply too long in a time of peril.
And if you think, Matt, about how long the election campaign went on before this inauguration day, it feels like this has been going on forever. It feels like Barack Obama's been part of our daily lives for an awful long time. Although, of course, as you pointed out earlier, 8 years ago, he wasn't even able to get onto the floor of the Democratic convention. So in some ways his rise has been meteoric, but it certainly feels like this whole transition from the election campaign through to Inauguration Day has taken an awful long time. 8 years of President Bush, and I think a lot of people in this crowd have been saying, thank goodness that period is over and that the new period can actually now start. We're starting to see now, Matt, over my right shoulder, I can just see coming down Pennsylvania Avenue towards the White House some of the first advanced vehicles for the parade. At the moment, they're only the security vehicles. People here have been waiting as well since about 7 in the morning when I got here, so they've been waiting an awfully long time for their little moment of this day of history.
And Catty, how much do you imagine life for this family will now change? I mean, one of your children, your son, goes to the same school as the Obama children. Lucky man. How much do you think life, especially for the kids, will now change as a result of what's been happening today?
Well, it's bound to change hugely. I mean, imagine if your children were suddenly thrust into the national spotlight as those two girls have been. I know that Michelle Obama has said it's an absolute priority for her to try and keep their lives normal. She even said she's going to make sure that they make their own beds in the morning, even though they're living in the White House. But it's bound to change, and partly as well because, their parents are going to be extremely busy from now on. That's why she's asked her mother, Marion, to come and live with them in the White House to try and make that transition as normal as possible and as smooth as possible. Over the next few weeks, for every single weekend, they have friends coming down from Chicago, friends of the Obamas, who are going to come down. They have a very close-knit group of friends from up in Chicago, people who they spend evenings playing Scrabble with, people who they had a very normal family life with, and that group has said that they're going to try and make sure that the Obamas, as a family, particularly the children, have a smooth introduction to what it's like to live in the White House. But this is a bubble behind me, that house that those girls and that family are going to live in. So their life is going to change immeasurably from today.
And you know, Cathy, it's so interesting what you say there, because I think it was the two of us actually the other day who thought, how many times has President Bush actually been out for dinner in the city that he's lived in for the last 8 years? And I think some poor man actually counted them, and it was 21. So President Bush has been out of the White House to enjoy himself in this city, not on an official function, only 21 times in 8 years. The Obamas, Cathy, as we know, have already said that they want to live in this city, not just be residents in the White House, in their bubble, but live in the city.
And more
even though they have
Matt,
their close circle of friends from Chicago, they will be much more present on the scene here than the previous incumbent of this office was.
Yeah, and I think even more significantly, Barack Obama has said he doesn't want to just live in northwest Washington, which is where I'm standing now, and which is where both you and I live, which is a largely white area of this city. He wants to unite the two bits of the city. He said just a couple of weeks ago that it really saddened him the extent to which Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, is divided racially between white in one area of the city and blacks living in another area of the city. And he wants to try and bring those two sides together. He said he's going to visit churches in various parts of the city. And I think that's going to be a real challenge for him, to see if he can not just unite this country politically and unite this town politically, but unite it socially as well. And it'd be fascinating to see over the next 4 years whether Washington as a city changes and becomes more racially integrated.
Well, not just more racially integrated, but also a city that all Americans can identify with, not just because of its government. I mean, we've seen in the last few weeks the greatest amassing of Hollywood stars and celebrities, I think, that this city has ever seen. They would not have turned up, even for Ronald Reagan, who of course was himself a Hollywood star, to the same extent that they've turned up for Barack Obama. So clearly there are huge expectations there. And to a large extent, his presidency embodies the kind of melding of really serious political power and the law of celebrity. Again, the question, Cathy, is can he withstand that? Can he keep that going? Because what we all know from his campaign and from the transition is that this is a man who reaches out to millions through the internet, but he keeps his decisions to a very closely knit kitchen cabinet of a very small number of people who are under oath not to leak ever.
Yeah, he's not a person that likes leaking. He's not a person that likes drama. The No Drama Obama slogan of his campaign was very real. It's also going to be a very strong White House. It's going to be interesting to see how the strong personalities that he's brought into the executive office manage with all those different cabinet personalities as well. He's made sure that the people surrounding him directly in the Oval Office are very powerful individuals, very bright individuals. That might cause some friction with some of the cabinet secretaries that he's been brought in as well. He's got people like Larry Summers close to him, up against Tim Geithner, who's going to be the head of the Treasury. And that's just one indication of those two opposing forces there.
Cathy, we'll just leave it there for a minute. We'll get back to you in a minute because we've got Rajesh Mirchandani only seconds away from the big moment when the presidential, what should we call it, procession, inaugural procession, passes him and the crowds around him. Rajesh, how far are you away from this?
Matt, I don't know about seconds. This is really a snail's pace, but given that people have been waiting 10 hours, I don't think they're going to begrudge the new president a couple of more minutes. We have now, behind us, the various military bands, begun at the front with the US Army Band, and there's also going to be bands from 5 other branches of, 4 other branches of the military, and also the Merchant Marine. So we have the Army Band, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, the US Coast Guard, and then the US Merchant Marine. That's the military element of the parade, and then obviously this time around there's a huge civilian element to the parade, and they'll be following on later. But I think after the military bands is when we'll start to see the presidential cavalcade come along. It's very, very slow. I can't even hear people cheering further down Pennsylvania Avenue, and I thought by now we would be able to hear that cheer sort of come along as a bit of a wave along the street. So I don't know how fast they're going, but it looks like it's about 2 miles an hour, if that. It's moving extraordinarily slowly, but they're getting here, and this is the moment that these thousands of people who've been up since before dawn have been waiting for, a glimpse of the new president, and hopefully he might get out and shake a few hands. If he does, it's going to delay him getting to us even further, but we won't begrudge him that.
And you notice there some of the bystanders saluting their new commander-in-chief, others just taking pictures of him. But this is, of course, the deal here. This man is not just the chief executive of America, he's also the commander of America's armies fighting 2 wars abroad. And he is a man who's now going to very fast have to become a major fixer of economic woes. Right, just one other question briefly before we move on. I mean, you're based in Los Angeles. Surely they are excited about Barack Obama there, or do they have any misgivings at all about him?
It's huge. I've traveled around America a little bit in the last year covering the election campaign, and on the West Coast, he is the biggest celebrity of all, quite simply. In a town full of stars, he's the brightest. There's a huge amount of support for him at all the parties. Celebrities turn out at all the campaign events. Celebrities turn out as well. There were celebrities endorsing him publicly, left, right and centre. And that's been reflected in some of the guests who were invited to be a part of that very special area on the podium today. You had people like Spielberg, Tom Hanks were invited as well. There's a lot of celebrities in town putting on balls and hosting parties. People like Susan Sarandon, very well-known, outspoken Democrat. Ben Affleck as well was in town. And I think that's been reflected also in the musicians who've turned out in support of Barack Obama, who performed in that concert on Sunday. There's a lot of celebrity support.
Rajesh, we're going to have to leave it there for a moment. So one final summing up for this hour. This is what we're watching, the presidential parade. Barack Obama in that car there that's snaking along Pennsylvania Avenue, sitting next to his wife, Michelle, and their 2 daughters. This is something that so many presidential candidates dream of, but so few ever get to actually do. It is certainly one of the many moments to remember of a day that will be remembered by America. Well, welcome back to this special, BBC special of the inauguration of President Barack Obama, America's 44th president. Here, sitting inside his armored limo. The number plate says USA 1. The car's also been called the Beast because of its weight, its size, its armor plating. Inside, the 44th president of this country, his wife, Michelle, and their 2 children, Sasha and Malia. 10 years old and 7 years old, I believe. Watching out, looking out through that tinted armored glass at the crowds. This is exactly the same view that they would have, the one that we're getting now. The crowds that have been amassing here since dawn. The hotel that they passed just now, by the way, is the Willard Hotel, in whose lobby the term lobbyist was first invented, because that's where Ulysses Grant, President Grant, used to go for a glass of whiskey after his chores in the White House, and whenever he walked through the revolving door in that hotel, he was bothered by people in the lobby, hence the term lobbyists. Yet another one of those wake-up moments of what it means to be a power broker in Washington, what it means to be president. That there'll be any number of people who will come to you and knock at your door or send you emails, who will say, you promised us this, you promised us that, why aren't you doing it, when are you going to do it? That will be the reality of power that Barack Obama will experience as soon as he gets into the Oval Office tomorrow morning. I don't know if you can see him there, but he is definitely behind that window. Secret Service agents by the side of the limo. This, of course, was started after the assassination of JFK. The first president to drive down Pennsylvania Avenue in an armored car was Lyndon Johnson in 19 65 after his landslide victory. And that, by the way, held the second record for the most attended inauguration ever. 1.5 million people turned up to see him. 2 million people or more have turned up to see Barack Obama. Let's go back to Cathy, who's waiting outside the White House. They're not very far away from where you are, Cathy. How are the crowds doing out there? Oh, we don't seem to have Cathy. Let's go back to Rajesh then. Rajesh, who's standing in Freedom Plaza, somewhere amongst that crowd that we can see. Rajesh, you know, you've spoken to a lot of people on the campaign trail, but also today. Beyond the symbolism of this day, what are the kind of key expectations? What are the 3 top things that people want Barack Obama to do once he actually starts running this country?
Well, I think certainly 2 top things are sort out the wars that America's involved in, but most above, absolutely the top priority of everyone is sort out the economy. You ask everyone, it's the economy, stupid. You know that. That's what everyone has been saying, and everyone says, you know, we are in trouble, we need someone who can turn this around. And there's a little bit of a dilemma, I think. I mean, everywhere you look, there are Barack Obama t-shirts, there are Barack Obama hats, there are gloves and scarves. I even bought a pair of socks that had Obama written on them. They were a gift for someone else. There's even Barack Obama scents. So someone was on the Capitol yesterday was selling Barack Obama perfume.
Rajesh, he's getting out. The president is getting out to do what we all expected him to do, which is to walk amongst the crowd.
I can hear the crowds.
There we are, Barack Obama, a man who rose to power on an extraordinary wave of popularity, who became a master campaigner, now walking amongst the people with his wife Michelle, amongst the crowds that have been waiting there since the very early morning. And this is something that almost every president does. Jimmy Carter famously did it for the entire parade. He got out of his car as soon as he got into the car on Capitol Hill and walked all the way to the White House, causing his Secret Service agents to have almost a bit of a seizure with nervousness, because this was not planned. I'm sure that this particular foray onto the street was well scripted and was discussed with various security agents. We live in such times, unfortunately. But there he is, Barack Obama, waving to the crowds up in the office blocks that line Pennsylvania Avenue. The crowds at the top, the crowds in the middle, the crowds at the bottom. Michelle Obama, almost as tall as her husband. Very elegant, always very elegant, and a very hands-on mother of 2 and star lawyer in her own right. Of course, the 2 of them met in a law firm in Chicago, and when Michelle Obama first met Barack, she told a friend of hers, he seems a bit cocky, who does he think he is? And then she warmed to him, and then they had their first date after a few months, and well, the rest is history. I wonder what kind of first lady she will be. Will she be hands-on like Hillary Clinton was controversially? Admittedly, a decade and a half ago. America, of course, has changed a bit since then when it comes to women in politics. We've had 2 female secretaries of state. We've got a female Speaker of the House of Representatives. We almost had a female president. We now have another female Secretary of State. So I think that's no longer an issue, quite frankly. But will she become involved in the kind of outreach work that Barack Obama has prided himself on? Or will she spend more time with her children, as she has suggested? Her mother, Mrs. Robinson, has moved into the White House to become the first mother-in-law. That's also something that hasn't happened for a very long time indeed. She will be there to look after the kids while she looks after her husband. Her husband will try to look after the nation. He's clearly enjoying this. It's funny, you know, I think this is the happiest that I've seen him all day. He looked slightly somber at his lunch on Capitol Hill. He, of course, struck a very somber note of oratory when he spoke to the world and to America in his speech, but now he seems to have found his stride, that cool gait that he's known for, picking up the pace a little bit, outpacing the car that he drove in before. And they once said, of course, to Michelle Obama not so long ago, when your husband becomes president, you will never drive a car again. Everyone will drive for you. You will never drive again unless you do it on a President Bush-style Texas ranch. Well, we can now go to Gavin Hewitt, who's also down there amongst the crowd, our special correspondent. Gavin, you've seen these images before, you've seen the archive. What do you make of this day today?
Well, I think first of all the size of the crowds, and also that feeling that you heard time and time again two things. First of all, people wanted change, and secondly, I think there was that real sense that this was going to be a history day. Certainly a very cold one, but a day that America may not see for a very long time in the future, when they knew that somehow the whole burden of its past shifted. Now, interestingly, I've been talking to some of the people about the speech, and I think there is a little bit of a kind of disappointment that some great memorable lines, it wasn't full of soaring rhetoric, which some people we spoke to very much earlier in the day had been looking for. But I think also there is a sense it was very acutely pitched that President Obama recognizes that this is not a particularly happy time for the United States, and that he had to reflect that. It'll be a time for sacrifice, for difficult days ahead. And I think, therefore, there were a lot of people who, although they were obviously delighted to be here, to say that they were here on this day, but also that I think they came away feeling that what essentially the new president was asking of them, that this would be a time of sacrifice, a time when they would have to endure, and it may not go on for weeks or months, but for years, which is what Barack Obama was saying only 2 days ago.
Indeed, and I think, I mean, we've seen him, well, you especially, Gavin, because of course you followed him on the campaign trail. You saw him being able to use the power of words and the power of organization through his really quite unprecedented campaign in order to try and unveil people into his political arena that perhaps weren't part of that before. He will really need all those skills in order to make sure that America continues to be on his side as he engages on perhaps the boldest economic stimulus package that we've seen since the Great Depression, as he tries to unravel some of the problems that America has got itself stuck into, starting with the closure of Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, which many in this town expect him to do as soon as tomorrow, Gavin.
Absolutely. I mean, President Obama is enjoying this moment, and tonight he'll go out to the balls